Chapter 978. Although the second-generation intrinsic spirit field was very powerful, Fengxing knew that this battle couldn't be dragged out. His intrinsic spirit field had a gravity attribute, and anyone who entered it would find it difficult to move an inch. Once inside the intrinsic spirit field, the other party's identity would also be exposed. Fengxing could clearly see the person's face. It was a familiar face with skin that was sickly white. The young man wore a white short-sleeved shirt and a gray overcoat. He wore a pair of jeans with suspenders on his lower body, which gave him the air of a "you're too beautiful" man. Baizha. Fengxing was startled. He had never expected President Bai to actually still be alive. As far as he could remember, Baizha had already been annihilated along with Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Both his body and soul had been destroyed, and there was no possibility of resurrection at all. The person standing in front of him now had the same face as Baizha, and his real name. Bewildered, Fengxing frowned and looked at the other party with a vigilant expression. "No, you're not Baizha." Fengxing frowned. Although this person looked very similar to Baizha, his aura was completely different. The sickly pale young man clapped. As expected of a mortal Shipai's descendant, you can actually tell the difference. That's right, I'm indeed not Baizha, but his son Bai Kuanyu. He has a son? Fengxing was astonished. Bai Kuanyu smiled, which looked a little like he deserved a beating. Immortal Shipais might shook the cultivation world back then, and his fame was matchless. But as everyone knows, he never married and lived out his life alone. It was only when he was imprisoned that he gave birth to you. If this damn ladyboy has children, why doesn't my dad? Shut up. Fengxing grit his teeth. His golden hair flew in the wind as he glared at Bai Yuquan. "Since you're in my intrinsic spirit field, don't even think about leaving." His footsteps shook, and the ground in front of him instantly collapsed. Fengxing's footprints were magnified infinitely, leaving behind a huge, deep pit. At the same time, a huge meteorite fell from the sky in the direction of the pit. Bai Yuquan had clearly come prepared. Deep in the pit, his expression didn't change in the slightest. He had expected that the second-generation intrinsic spirit field would be very strong. The intrinsic spirit field had been passed down from generation to generation, and it had originally stored immortal Shipai's power. All these years, Fengxing had never stopped cultivating, and Bai Yuquan was now facing 89 times the normal gravity. It was indeed difficult for him to even take a single step here. Even a true immortal would find it hard to move under such a powerful gravitational force. Bai Yuquan knew that he was only at the soul formation stage, and he had no chance of winning against Fengxing in a normal cultivation duel. But, the next moment, Bai Youquan's entire body was covered in a burst of golden light, and he flew out of the pit. Fengxing stared at Bai Yuquan, who gave off a very strange feeling from head to toe. What Bai Yuquan used was not spiritual energy. Instead, it was a power that Fengxing had never seen before. Fengxing knew that Baizha had collected outer Dao from all over the place to deal with Wang Ling. But now, the power that Bai Yuquan had revealed had far surpassed that of the heretics. It's not a divine power, it's not outer Dao, and it's not divine Dao. Fengxing was surprised. Bai Youquan's realm wasn't high, but the strength he was displaying was far beyond what it seemed. Bai Yuquan slowly emerged from the pit, his body exuding an aura that Fengxing had never sensed before. As expected of the son of immortal Shipai, you live up to your reputation. But I heard that you have another form. If you don't show it, I'm afraid you won't be able to contend with me. His voice wasn't loud, but every word penetrated deep into the bones, as if it was ringing in the soul and reverberating throughout the intrinsic spirit field. If you won't show it, then I'll make the first move. Bai Yuquan took a step forward, and his aura was like a dragon blade cutting through the air. As he advanced, it destroyed the ground, sending rubble flying and forming a terrifying abyss. Just moving has such destructive power. Fengxing was shocked. In that strange aura, the other party was able to walk through 89 times the normal gravity as if it were flat ground. This wasn't the strength that a soul formation cultivator should have. Classmate Feng, just give up. You're no match for me, and even less for my father. Bai Yuquan sneered. He threw a punch, and Fengxing was sent flying backward as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Bai Yuquan moved extremely quickly, and his second punch was aimed at Fangxing's leg. Snake scales. Fangxing reacted very quickly. He sent out his life-bonded magic treasure, and the snake spirit swiftly formed a defensive wall around where the punch was going to land, but it could only serve as a buffer. Bai Youquan's punch wasn't pretentious, but it was merciless as it shattered the bones in Fangxing's leg. "It's over, classmate Fang." Bai Youquan recited an incantation, and his overalls suddenly flew off of their own accord. Like tentacles, they wrapped around Fangxing's hands and feet firmly. Fangxing stared in astonishment as Bai Youquan appeared in front of him in only his underwear. He had even taken off his gray coat and white t-shirt. Exhibitionist. Fangxing stared at this person, his heart in a tempestuous storm. This person's realm was strange. He clearly wasn't strong, but he was displaying strength beyond his realm, and was displaying strength that Fangxing had never seen before. "Who wants to capture me?" Fangxing knew that it was pointless to fight with all his might at the moment, so he stared at Bai Youquan and asked, "My father wants to see you." Bai Youquan smiled. "You should have already seen that my realm is only at the soul formation stage, but my strength far surpasses that of a true immortal. Even if I go up against the 10 generals, they might not be my match. And my father is dozens of times stronger than me." "Your father should already be dead. Who can say for sure about life and death in this world? It's all just fate." Bai Youquan shrugged. "Why are you looking for me? You don't need to fish for information, classmate Fang. You can't escape me. I might as well tell you the truth. We're looking for true immortal Shi Pai's urn. After true immortal Shi Pai died, he gave it to you to deal with. If you hand it over, you might be able to resurrect your father." "You want to resurrect my father?" Fangxing was astonished. "Bai Youquan, I don't know how, but my father was resurrected." "Resurrecting your own father. I think this should be a very good deal for you. You probably have a lot of questions to ask your father, right?" Fangxing, "Why are you looking for my father?" Bai Youquan, "Everyone knows that true immortal Shi Pai gave birth to you alone. When it comes to infertility, he's an expert in this field. Who else would we look for if not him?" Fangxing. Chapter 979. More than 10 years ago, immortal Shi Pai had been punished by Huaxiu Alliance for several crimes, stripped of all his magic power, and sentenced to death. Before he died, true immortal Shi Pai laid an egg and entrusted it to General Yi. And the baby born from the egg was Fangxing himself. Fangxing had in fact never given up on investigating his father's death, but in the end, he still hadn't found anything. On the way, as Bai Youquan listened to Fangxing's story, he couldn't help having a strange look in his eyes. "So you're not human? You're not human. But humans are mammals, and you jumped out of a F***king egg. Won't people say you copied Demon King Piccolo? A chicken is still born from an egg." "That's true." Bai Youquan grabbed Fangxing. At that moment, the two of them were in a spirit car. This was a custom-made car made of a very strange material, but there was absolutely no oil leakage, and it definitely wouldn't attract the crying female graduate student who sat on the hood of the car. True Shi Pai's death back then was very strange. He was Devil Emperor Guapai's disciple, and had always worked behind the scenes. But after Devil Emperor Guapai was captured, he suddenly led a large number of devil troops in rebellion. His way of doing things was very strange, Bai Youquan said suspiciously. Before capturing Fangxing, he had done a lot of homework. "You also think there's something wrong with my father's death?" "It's just a hunch. I think there might be something to it. But true Shi Pai has already been dead for more than 10 years, so there's not much point in discussing this now." Saying this, Bai Youquan looked at Fangxing. "I actually don't hate you, and I can even help you." Fangxing, "Help me." Bai Youquan, "Haven't you always wanted to know the truth of what happened back then? Given my father's current strength, it'll be a piece of cake for him to investigate what happened back then." Hearing this, Fangxing was silent. "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking of a way to escape. If you had fought to the death in the intrinsic spirit field back then, I wouldn't have taken you away so easily." Bai Youquan smiled and said, "You deliberately lost so easily because you wanted me to bring you to our stronghold, and then you secretly released the news to inform your companions, right?" Fangxing was silent again. He had never expected Bai Yuquan to be so meticulous. Student Fong is not saying anything. Looks like I guessed right. Bai Yuquan leaned back comfortably in the armchair. He didn't care about Feng Xing at all, and wasn't worried that Feng Xing would suddenly attack him. Bai Yuquan smiled. So classmate Feng Xing, you don't need to look for trouble. You told me about the location where true immortal Shi Pai's urn is hidden. It should be a fake address, right? After you were born, because some of the 10 generals were worried that the powerful power you inherited would bring hidden dangers to the future, they secretly trained you until you were 4 years old, and sent you to the completely closed school, Disher Tianzhong. There were many children who were similarly talented, but lost their parents there. However, the children from Sakura Heaven are unsociable. In many cases, no family is willing to take the initiative to adopt them. But you're lucky. You met your adoptive parents, Madame Fong, who now runs a noodle shop. It was only later that you had the chance to transfer to number 60 high. What else do you know? Feng Xing frowned. He felt that he had completely underestimated Bai Yuquan. This person knew more than Feng Xing had imagined. I know everything about you. Bai Yuquan smiled. You transferred to number 60 high to look for your childhood hero. It's all for that classmate Wang Ling, right? Hearing this, Feng Xing couldn't help widening his eyes. This matter. It was impossible for anyone else to know. He had never mentioned it to anyone. Are you feeling flustered, classmate Feng? Bai Yuquan snorted. There's no harm in telling you the truth. My father is just a part-time worker in the newly established organization. Our master is more powerful than you can imagine. From Bai Youquan's words, for the first time, Feng Xing sensed an unprecedented risk. Indeed, the enemy this time couldn't be compared with the opponents of the past. Not only did the other party have incomparably mysterious strength, they also had a terrifying intelligence network and knew things that ordinary enemies couldn't possibly know. Now that things have come to this, I think classmate Feng no longer needs to hide anything. The organization is opening its arms to you, and I think you need to cherish this opportunity. Bai Yuquan crossed his legs as he spoke. He didn't need to drive. The spirit car was now in automatic spirit car drift mode, and could drive itself. But Bai Yuquan knew that the address Feng Xing had given him was fake, so from the beginning, the car had been driving in circles in the city without actually going anywhere. What on earth do you want me to do? Feng Xing sighed. To show your sincerity, classmate Feng can hand over immortal Shi Pai's urn first, and then we'll talk about the deal. Classmate Feng, don't worry, we're not interested in the urn. We just need a little bit of the ashes, Bai Yuquan said. Do you want to soak it in milk? Classmate Feng, why ask when you already know the answer? If you want to know about your father, it's actually very simple. We just need to bring him back to life, and you can ask him yourself. Bai Yuquan said. You're his son. I believe he won't hide anything from you, and you'll eventually find the answer you've been searching for all these years. Then wait. Feng Xing took a deep breath. In the next moment, his stomach instantly swelled up. It was as if Bai Yuquan already knew what Feng Xing was going to do, and he cried out in disbelief. Holy shit, did you eat your father's urn? Feng Xing didn't say anything. After a long while, he spat out a small, unadorned black iron box. Immortal Shi Pai's ashes were stored inside the pouch. The entire urn was in perfect condition. Bai Yuquan didn't mind. Taking the urn, he straightaway wiped the saliva off it with his own grapefruit, and then posted a selfie. Feng Xing. Bai Yuquan. Don't misunderstand, I didn't reveal anything about the urn. I just wanted to post a selfie to remember it. Actually, I've always been a fan of immortal Shi Pai. People like us are also called ish, and our organization isn't any smaller than Icon. Feng Xing. Just as Bai Yuquan finished speaking, a series of sirens suddenly rang out next to the spirit car. Police? Bai Yuquan rolled down the window, but the person outside wasn't wearing a police uniform. Chapter 980. Visual China. It was a rogue online photo download company that collected arbitrary copyright fees. Many people unknowingly used online images, and then the company came knocking on their door to demand copyright fees. The main point was that the company didn't allow people to delete the photos, so they had to pay compensation or file a lawsuit. Rich companies would directly send a lawyer's letter, while poor companies would send a lawyer's letter for a few years. The most amazing thing was that this company relied on copyright lawsuits to King go public. There had always been a saying on the internet. Visual China has suffered for a long time. Respecting copyright was originally a good thing, but acting like a hooligan while using copyright protection as a shield was wrong. It was clear that Visual China didn't have any self-awareness, and even took it upon Bai Yuquan to do the same. Bai Yuquan rolled down the window, completely ignoring the young man on the motorcycle outside. After all, the most painful thing in the world was to deal with hooligans. A bunch of hooligans wasn't scary, but cultured hooligans were scary. You're ignoring him? Feng Xing felt that it wasn't Bai Youquan's character to keep the peace. Although he hadn't known Bai Yuquan for very long, Feng Xing had already attached his own label to him. There was no doubt that this was a dangerous person, and could also be called a benevolent villain. After closing the window, Bai Yuquan looked at the time. 3 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. Boom. As Bai Yuquan counted down to 3, Feng Xing suddenly heard a huge noise outside the window, and all the cars on the overpass felt a tremor. At that moment, Bai Yuquan turned on the road traffic broadcast. A few minutes later, there was an announcement. Hello citizens. We have urgent news. According to the latest report, Visual China building exploded for an unknown reason 5 minutes ago, and has now been reduced to ashes. The specific cause of the accident is currently under investigation. Feng Xing was stunned. Aren't you too? This is our organization's style of doing things. Student Feng, you better get used to it as soon as possible. Bai Yuquan gave a devilish smile. Now we're already in the same boat. You really aren't afraid to provoke anyone. Except for IKUN. There are too many people on the other side, and we can't wipe them all out in a short time. But we've already released the news online, and I believe Huaxiu Alliance will respond. Why should Huaxiu Alliance listen to you? Feng Xing was shocked. Do you know what ICAN means? ICAN equals, I want to kill the United Nations, wanted to annihilate the United Nations. Isn't this clearly pointing at Huaxiu Alliance? We have released the news on the internet. He. I believe it won't be long before they can't hold on anymore. Bai Yuquan revealed a devilish smile. He fondly played with the simple, pitch-black urn in his hand, as if he really had a soft spot for immortal Shi Pai. Feng Xing took a deep breath. He felt that Bai Yuquan was a little scary. What was even more frightening was that he didn't know who on earth the mastermind behind this menacing President Bai was. Now that he was completely monitored by Bai Yuquan, there was no way for him to escape. Could Wang Ling sense the danger this time? Feng Xing was worried. Student Feng, since you've already given the organization your first gift, then, do you want to meet our leader? Bai Yuquan asked as he fiddled with the urn. Your father? Feng Xing asked. No, the mastermind behind the scenes, someone you definitely won't expect, Bai Yuquan replied. At that moment, in the noodle shop, Wang Ling, Wang Ming and Guoping were still waiting for Feng Xing to return. It's been almost 2 hours since Student Feng went out to buy ingredients. Why isn't he back yet? Guoping frowned. He felt that the situation wasn't simple. Let's listen to some music. There might be some traffic on the way, said Wang Ming. He turned on Irascible Dharmaraj's new single, Big Bowl of Wide Noodles. This was the latest song released today, and had instantly become a hot search with tens of millions of people paying attention to it. This was Irascible Dharmaraj's self-deprecating song. Previously, Irascible Dharmaraja had always been criticized for his terrible singing. Now that he had released this song, who knew how much better the public relations ability behind him was than some of his peers? The melody of Big Bowl of Wide Noodles was actually pretty good, but Guoping wasn't in the mood to listen to it right now. Feng Xing still hadn't returned, and Guoping had a bad feeling. Could something have happened? As Guoping said this, Wang Ling used the Great Deduction spell to divine Feng Xing's movements, and saw that Feng Xing's fate line was calm and peaceful, without anything out of the ordinary. If there was any danger, then the fluctuation of the fate line should be unstable, like the waves of the ocean. Wang Ling put down his finger and drank the noodle shop's barley tea, which still smelled of tea. This was Fong Family Noodle Shop's homemade barley tea, which was freshly brewed every day. Today, Fong Xing had gotten up very early to welcome them to the meeting. Now that he had gone to the market to buy ingredients, it wasn't like he had found an excuse to stand them up. Somehow, Wang Ling felt that something wasn't right, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He just felt that it was a little strange. He suddenly felt as if he had been caught in something. Or perhaps something was obstructing him. After another half an hour, Guoping was a little impatient. In fact, he was mainly worried about Fong Xing. Fong Xing wasn't familiar with Guoping, but Guoping was very familiar with him. The truth was that Guoping had secretly watched Fong Xing grow up. When immortal Shipai had laid an egg back then, it had actually been Guoping who had used existing equipment to safely hatch Fong Xing from the egg. It could be said that Guoping had been one of the witnesses to Fong Xing's hatching. Their relationship had been forged a long time ago. It was just that Fong Xing himself didn't know it. Wait a minute. Guoping took out his phone and sent a text message to a few of his friends at the municipal police station. Whether it was a traffic accident or something else, it had to be filed with the cultivation police. If there really was an accident, at the very least, his friends at the cultivation police station would be able to give Guoping some feedback. Guoping texted several people, and later even asked the head of the cultivation public security department. When the headquarters used their computers to check, they found no leads. "How is it?" asked Wang Ming. "No news." Guoping frowned. "I'll do it." At that moment, Wang Ling said telepathically. He sent a text message to the number 60 squad's group chat. "Has anyone seen Fong Xing?" "Fong Xing? I don't know, are you looking for him?" Superchin replied instantly. With one look, Wang Ling knew that this guy was playing games. Wang Ling replied. "He didn't contact us, and I don't know where he is. I think there's an 80 to 90% chance that he was kidnapped." Superchin sent a sinister smile. Sogu reading website. Chapter 981. Wang Ling had never made a mistake in his calculations, but he had made a mistake this time, and it was a little strange. Fong Xing's fate had clearly not fluctuated, but he had been kidnapped for no reason at all. Given Fong Xing's strength, how could ordinary kidnappers have been able to do anything to him? As Wang Ling pondered this, there was something strange about this matter from beginning to end. Ling, something doesn't seem right. Even Wang Ming frowned as he felt something he had never felt before. It was like a mouthful of blood clogged up in his heart, and it was a little suffocating. "I have a bold idea," Wang Ling suddenly said telepathically at that moment. Then he looked at Guoping. He needed to verify this idea with Divine Tao Star. He suspected that apart from Heavenly Tao, Outer Tao and Divine Tao, there might be another kind of power. Elsewhere, Bai Yuquan had brought Fong Xing to the mouth of a city alley. This was a dead end, and next to it was an unfamiliar bar that Fong Xing had never been to before. Looking at the way things were going, he had already entered Bai Youquan's and the others' territory from the moment he entered this street. There were two burly men in suits standing guard at the mouth of the dead end. And when they saw Bai Yuquan, they voluntarily made way for him. These were just two guards doing odd jobs, but they were nascent soul experts. As Fong Xing brushed past them, he immediately noticed the tattoos on their necks. This was the symbol of foreign cultivation mercenaries. These people had burn marks on their bodies, which immediately gave Fong Xing an idea. But what Fong Xing didn't expect was that after entering the dead end, Bai Yuquan would directly say frankly, "Student Fong is right. These people are all dead. They are all from abroad and died in battle for their former organizations. They are a group of people worthy of respect." "You resurrected them?" "That's right." Bai Yuquan said, "They died in battle for their former organizations. They are a group of unyielding men. We resurrected them, and they will serve us wholeheartedly now. They are a group of warriors who aren't afraid of death. Furthermore, they are already dead, and have nothing to do with their former organizations." Bai Yuquan laughed. "Also, these people have already been dead for over 300 years, and have long since been reduced to ashes. No one expected them to come back to life. Regardless of whether they died for the organization or if the organization wanted them dead, they would not leave behind any evidence. Even if a corpse is left behind, there's no way to find it. Hearing this, Fangxing exclaimed in his heart. This was indeed a good move. Letting dead people, who had been dead for hundreds of years, continue to work for his organization. No one had thought of this. Resurrection spells did exist in this world, but because of the complexity of the methods, and because of the law of equivalent exchange and the law of conservation of psionic energy, resurrecting a person required the sacrifice of many things. For example, amputating limbs. Perhaps it could only be exchanged for 1 to 2 years of a person's lifespan. This was not a cost-effective spell, and it was also a forbidden spell. Bai Youquan's organization seemed to have some power that ignored the forbidden spell, and used this complicated resurrection spell as an ordinary spell. Mass revival. This was something Fangxing couldn't imagine. Bai Youquan and the others had so many strange methods that it left people speechless. He took Fangxing to the end of the alley. After Bai Youquan made a hand seal, a strange magic array lit up on the wall, which was densely covered with runes that Fangxing couldn't understand. It definitely wasn't the spirit language or the divine language, which Fangxing had already experienced on Divine Dao Star. It was clear that the runes on this magic array were very different from any language that Fangxing knew. They looked more like the characters of ants, and at first glance, they didn't seem to be any different from each other. Fangxing's face froze when he saw these cryptic runes. He felt that everything was too strange, and completely out of his control. Fangxing felt like he had sunk into a giant pit that he couldn't get out of. Classmate Fang, it's too early to be alarmed. There's a lot of things you haven't seen before. Bai Youquan pressed his palm against the magic array, and Fangxing saw the array distort as the light turned in zigzag. Finally, a mouth suddenly materialized in the center of the array. An old voice rang out, like the resurrection of an ancient creature, and it gave off a soul-shaking sound. Please verify your identity. Fangxing's heart trembled at this voice, and he felt as if his soul had actually been completely hooked away by it. In that instant, Fangxing was suddenly curious about this strong power. He suddenly felt that everything he had learned now wasn't enough at all. In the face of this power, he suddenly felt that everything he had learned now wasn't enough. It was to the extent that his soul and heart began to fluctuate. But very quickly, Fangxing came back to his senses as a familiar aura pulled him back to reality. In his pocket was an eraser that Wang Ling had given him. He had borrowed it from Wang Ling during the midterm exams, but had forgotten to return it after the exams, and Wang Ling hadn't asked him for it. Later, by the time Fangxing realized it, it was already summer break. He had no intention of returning the eraser, and at that moment, it was the power of this eraser that had pulled Fangxing back to reality, and prevented his soul from being hooked away by this mysterious power. Fangxing realized that this mysterious power was a little like a drug. Once you fell into it, it would be hard to get out, as if you were stuck in mud. Please verify your identity. At that moment, the mouth in the strange array spoke once again. After speaking twice, Bai Youquan didn't immediately verify Fangxing's identity, and seemed to be waiting for this mysterious power to swallow him up. But strangely, Fangxing didn't fall for it. The second time, Fangxing didn't know if it was because of the eraser, but he wasn't affected by this old voice, and he could feel that his consciousness was very clear. Furthermore, he saw Bai Youquan's puzzled expression on the side. Bai Youquan narrowed his eyes, but in the end, he stuck his hand into the mouth. Fangxing. Bai Youquan. It's a little complicated to verify your identity. You have to stick your entire arm into the mouth, and then say the password. If you're not from the organization and want to sneak in, your arm will be bitten off. As soon as Bai Youquan said this, the mouth of the array, and XNSJ, Fangxing. Bai Youquan. This means that I have to say the password. After all, I can't speak properly with my hand in the mouth. Fangxing. Then Bai Youquan stared at the mouth with a serious expression on his face and said, I'm Bai Youquan. I like singing, dancing, rap and basketball. Fangxing. M. Chapter 982. The maze in the dead end glowed, and a force pulled Fangxing inside. Fangxing followed Bai Youquan into another world. To his surprise, it wasn't the base he had imagined, but a new world that seemed to have been molded. Everything here was reversed, like the surface of a mirror. Could this also be the power of a DGL? Feng Xing pondered in his heart. On the other side, Bai Yuquan stared at him with a mysterious smile. Classmate Feng, welcome to the world our Lord has set up, the Palace of Mirrors. Then, Feng Xing saw Bai Yuquan take out the urn which he had given him earlier, take out a very small pinch, and scatter it on the ground like brother salt. In an instant, a spirit plant with an embryo suddenly emerged from the ground. The stamen of this spirit plant was a baby in human form, but it was only the size of a sweet potato. Its stem was very thick and firmly rooted in the ground, and it seemed to be absorbing spirit power from the ground to replenish itself. Feng Xing noticed that the Palace of Mirrors was the complete opposite. Spirit chi was being consumed very quickly on Earth, and all the researchers were doing their best to solve this problem. However, the spirit chi in the Palace of Mirrors was unimaginably abundant. Let's go. I'll take you to see our Lord. Bai Yuquan planted the spirit plant at the entrance. Feng Xing said, "What about this flower? Ignore it. In 24 hours, I'll take you to harvest your father." Elsewhere, after confirming that Feng Xing had been kidnapped, Wang Ling and the others began to carry out a preliminary search. Feng Xing's aura was completely gone, as if he had vanished from the world. But the problem was that people couldn't just disappear into thin air. Even if they disappeared from the world, there was a place where they had disappeared. I've already contacted my friend. He'll use the National AI facial recognition technology to identify the locations of the props, Guoping said. Maybe it won't be so troublesome. Wang Ming shook his head and said, "How many surveillance cameras are there in the country? Even if we exclude those that are being maintained and repaired, there are still 300 million. Guoping said. This was Huaxiao Nation's Project Divine Eye, which had been set up to stop crime from the very beginning. Almost all public places, except for toilets and some relatively private areas, were covered with the God Eye Project's road detectors. They were all extremely clear. After zooming in, even a few hairs on one's face could be seen clearly. Thinking of what Wang Ming had said, Guoping felt that he had almost misunderstood. You mean start with the damaged and repaired probes? Since there are damaged and repaired probes, let's start with the ones in Songhai City. We might find something faster. Those people probably won't be so stupid as to brazenly make Feng Xing disappear. After Wang Ming said this, Guoping hurriedly nodded. All right. Project Divine Eye had a grand layout, but the rate of damage and maintenance was very low. There were less than 5% nationwide, and even less in Songhai City. Then start with the bad ones. I'll arrange it, Guoping said as he stared at Wang Ling. From the very beginning, he had noticed that Wang Ling had been rooted to the spot like a block of wood. Ling Zhenren this. He's trying to confirm something. It should be an out-of-body experience. But in this state, it's best not to disturb him, Wang Ming said. Why? This is custody mode. Even if his soul is in an out-of-body state, half the people won't be able to beat him with their physical bodies alone. I see. Guoping nodded thoughtfully. When he had first entered the room, he had thought that Wang Ling's skin was super good. After learning that Wang Ling's hair was the energy lines he had consumed while drifting through the universe, Guoping's interest in Wang Ling had skyrocketed. Now that he was so close to Ling Zhenren, Guoping almost couldn't restrain his impulse just now. He actually wanted to pinch Ling Zhenren's face. Sure enough, cute boys really made it easy for people to commit crimes. Teacher Gua, are you thinking something vulgar and disrespectful to my little brother? Wang Ming had sensed Guoping's abnormality. As a qualified and perverted brother-con, Wang Ming was doing his best to keep a cool head. Guoping quibbled. Ling Zhenren isn't here now. Don't you want to do some human research up close? Human research? Hearing this, Wang Ming sucked in a breath of cold air. He never thought that Guoping would actually come up with such a tactful and unpretentious way of putting it. The point was that it sounded damn reasonable. They were all scientific researchers, and it was necessary to do human research up close. But no, Wang Ming felt that he had to keep his cool. How could he let other scientific researchers touch his little brother so casually? Teacher Gua, Please put away your bold ideas about my little brother. Wang Ming stood up agitatedly. His elbow slanted and knocked the teacup off the table. The teacup fell to the floor, but because of its material, it didn't shatter, and instead rolled all the way to Wang Ling's feet. Thus, when the teacup touched Wang Ling's shoe, an astonishing scene happened. There was a hum. A shock wave spread out with Wang Ling at its center. Then Ling Zhenren, who had been sitting obediently in his chair, shot out a laser beam from his eyes, directly shattering the teacup in his eyes. When the wind blew, not even ashes were left. Teacher Gua, do you still want to do it? Wang Ming hesitated. Let's postpone this investigation. There's always a chance. Gua Ping pulled his neck back and withdrew his hand. Elsewhere, Wang Ling's soul had left his body and appeared on Divine Dao Star. Divine Dao Star was very far from Earth, but Wang Ling had already been here once. He had left his aura here, so he could come over at any time. It hadn't even been half a month since Star-Lord had been crippled the last time, and he still hadn't fully recovered yet. Jinka had been a little fierce the last time, and wounds caused by Jinka wouldn't heal so easily. When Wang Ling went over, Star-Lord was still lying on the bed with his legs crossed and bandaged up. The chair which the Oracle had transformed into had been smashed to pieces by Jinka and by Qiao's Jingbai, which was a combination of Oracle and Oracle. In any case, after that experience, Star-Lord's after-effects had been completely exposed, and he didn't even keep the goldfish in his fish tank anymore. When he saw the dead fish eyes, it felt like Wang Ling was looking at him, and he would break out in a cold sweat every night when he dreamed. This time, Wang Ling didn't say hello at all. He floated in the air and met Star-Lord's eyes. Star-Lord was so scared that he pissed his pants. F***K. Curse grudge. Sogu reading website. Chapter 983. Star-Lord paled at Wang Ling's sudden appearance. His first reaction was to run away, and he immediately decided to cut off his tail. Cutting off his tail to survive. Wang Ling was a little surprised. He hadn't expected this guy to be a gecko. He had always thought that the divine dragons were a higher type of lizard. Holding his tail in his hand, Star-Lord was so frightened that he fell onto the bed. Hearing the noise, several inner palace guards outside the door immediately opened the door and barged in. Their movements were uniform and extremely fast. It was clear that they had been trained many times. But these inner palace guards were also injured, because they had all been beaten up by Wang Ling before. After the group of divine dragons broke into the room, the leader didn't even get a clear look at Wang Ling before he roared. How dare you? How dare you break into Star-Lord's palace? I think you don't want to live, At this point, his voice abruptly stopped, because they saw that the person who had appeared in front of Star-Lord's bed was Wang Ling. Then this group of divine dragons took a step back and closed the door. Sorry, I cleaned up, Star-Lord. Wang Ling. Big brother, I've already apologized, what else do you want? Star-Lord wanted to cry, but had no tears. After what had happened last time, he completely knew that he had been wrong. Previously, he relied on the will of the God realm, and had always acted as he pleased. But it wasn't until he met Wang Ling that he realized that there was always someone better out there. The most important thing was that the divine realm had already been stirred up, and even Thousand-Winged God was helpless in the face of this group of people, to say nothing of Star-Lord. Relying on the power of the divine realm, Divine Dao Star had been wildly expanding in the universe until Wang Ling's appearance, when he completely gave up on the idea of dominating the universe. What is the purpose of Exalted God's visit? Star-Lord spoke in Mandarin this time. Actually, Star-Lord could speak Mandarin to begin with, and as an alien, his spoken language was even very standard. He had always been very interested in Earth's culture, but hadn't shown it because of his pride. This time, in order to establish friendly relations with Earth, apart from recuperating from his injuries, Divine Dao Star-Lord was dragged along to attend supplementary classes. Now, not only did he learn all kinds of things that were needed on Earth, he even learned advanced mathematics. Thousand-Winged God dragged him along to study linear algebra, advanced functions, and vector space. It was too difficult. Why did this terrifying planet want to study such a terrifying thing? Wang Ling stared at Star-Lord's small, deathly pale face. For a green face to actually turn stone gray, it was clear that Wang Ling had traumatized Star-Lord back then. Of course, Wang Ling had come for proper business this time, and had no intention of deliberately teasing Star-Lord. He directly asked about some things he was concerned about telepathically. Actually, he felt that he would be able to learn more about these things if he went to the divine realm and asked around, but he hated the way those winged gods acted all high and mighty. Divine Tao Star was the only planet authorized by the divine realm. And this Star-Lord had been expanding for so many years, so he might know a lot about it. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he didn't want to deal with those winged gods again. When their wings were spread out, there were at most 1,000 of them, which was a ghastly sight to behold, as if they were suffering from trypophobia. Wang Ling felt that when the author had written this paragraph back then, he hadn't taken the animation team into consideration at all. 1,000 winged angels, this was too difficult to draw. This was basically asking the artist to die. Thus, Wang Ling had always had the idea that when they animated this paragraph, it would be better to directly get KFC to advertise it, and then replicate New Orleans roast wings on these winged gods, which would make money and save money. Instead, you could even endorse a few more chicken wing products, such as spicy chicken wings and finger-sucking original chicken. Wang Ling's question stumped Star-Lord for a moment. Divine Lord, apart from Heavenly Tao, Outer Tao, and Divine Tao, are there any other powers? Star-Lord thought carefully for a moment, then replied, as far as I know, there shouldn't be. As he said this, Star-Lord wiped at his sweat. Back then, Wang Ling had taken care of him in just a few moves. When it came to power alone, who in the entire universe would know it better than Star-Lord? But since Wang Ling had asked this question with such sincerity, Star-Lord could only answer truthfully and make his own conjecture. Among the supreme powers in the universe, apart from Outer Tao, Divine Tao, and Heavenly Tao, there really aren't any other powers. Even if they exist, they most likely can't be listed among the supreme powers. Furthermore, most powers basically have something in common. The reason why Outer Tao, Divine Tao, and Heavenly Tao can become the supreme powers is that they can be found in other powers. So, as he said this, Star-Lord turned his head to look at Wang Ling, only to find that Wang Ling wasn't listening to him, but was seriously reading through the 3-5 that he had done. This was the homework that Thousand-Winged God had given him. At that moment, Wang Ling was correcting it. There are a lot of mistakes. Work hard. In less than a moment, Wang Ling had put the corrected 3-5 on Star-Lord's bedside table. Star-Lord. Elsewhere in the noodle shop, Wang Ming and Guoping were waiting for news from Wang Ling. Wang Ling was still in control, his eyes lifeless and his pupils unfocused. He looked like an easy target to bully, but neither of them dared offend him lightly. I wonder what the situation is like. Guoping paced back and forth in the noodle shop with his hands behind his back, a little worried. How's the Divine Eyes investigation going? Asked Wang Ming. After the screening, the scope of their investigation had been greatly narrowed down, and Wang Ming had a feeling that it was about time. Let me ask. Guoping took out his phone again, and at that moment it rang. It was a series of miserable screams so shrill that Guoping's hand trembled, and he almost dropped the phone. After quickly composing himself, Guoping asked, "Hello, I'm Guoping. What's going on?" The miserable screams coming from the research institute made Guoping feel a little uneasy. Is this Professor Guoping? A stranger's voice came from the other end of the line. Guoping knew the people at the research institute like the back of his hand, and it was obvious that this was an outsider's voice. He frowned. Who are you? Professor Guo, what a good plan. You want to find out Student Feng's whereabouts by investigating the Divine Eye. You guessed right, Student Feng was abducted. But I'm afraid you won't have the chance to find out where he is. Just as the stranger's voice fell on the other end of the line, several figures broke through the window at the entrance to Fengxing's noodle shop. Not good. Guoping was astonished. They had been attacked. 5 nascent soul experts wearing the same black shadow suit entered the noodle shop. In that instant, Wang Ming pulled Guoping to the back to hide. Wang Ming couldn't see their faces clearly. The black shadow suit was a special type of weaponized Taoist robe that looked like a shadow when worn. However, it was extremely expensive to make, And it was impossible for an ordinary organization to have such a large-scale Black Shadow army. More importantly, the Black Shadow suit was a national strategic secret Taoist robe, which was only used by cultivation agents engaged in secret military work. But now, these people were dressed in the same uniform, which was unfathomable to Wang Ming and Guoping for a moment. The 5 nascent soul cultivators who had broken into the noodle shop had a very clear plan. The leader of the Black Shadow men commanded, "Go! Kill everyone here and go back to report." As soon as he said that, one of them raised a knife and slashed at Wang Ling, who was still in control. Chapter 984. This was the first time Wang Ming and Guoping had seen so many people dressed in Black Shadow suits appear at the same time. The other side's actions were clear and had clearly been premeditated. When Guoping had called the research institute earlier, there had been screams. Presumably, the institute had also been attacked by the Black Shadow men. But what Guoping didn't understand was that the Black Shadow suits were Taoist robes in the country's top-secret strategic plan. To be able to mass-produce them and launch an armed raid in such large numbers, the other side's background was definitely no small matter. Are they from the Dark Network or the Dark Forces? Wang Ming pondered a lot of things in that short moment. This group of people were fully armed and had a well-planned plan. To be able to launch a perfect surprise attack at the same time wasn't something that an ordinary Dark Network or Dark Force could do. Furthermore, almost all the members of the Dark Network and Dark Forces were currently under surveillance, and these forces had all been infiltrated by the cultivation police, and had been infiltrated by undercover agents. This undercover plan was also known as 3 years on the rooftop, 3 more years baby zither wine is bitter that there's no one normal by his side plan. The name of the plan sounded very long, but the security measures were in place. Other than the undercover personnel, no one would be able to repeat the name of the plan after hearing it only once. So as long as they did not repeat it completely, they were all fake spies. Wang Ming, this group of people is very strong, we're no match for them. Also, they don't seem to be using spirit energy. Unlike Wang Ming, Guoping also had the strength of a nascent soul cultivator, but when faced with the nascent soul Black Shadow men, he trembled. This group of people didn't use spirit energy to activate spells, and this unknown element terrified them. Thus, the moment this group of Black Shadow men barged in, Wang Ming and Guoping instinctively hid behind Wang Ling. The Black Shadow leader with the knife sneered. He didn't know Wang Ling's identity. A bunch of researchers hiding behind a youngster. What utter stupidity! Forget it, all of you here will die. Saying this, he chopped down at Wang Ling's head with his saber. The saber cut through the air with ferocious force, and the saber's blade cut through the air at a high speed, causing steam to rise. The saber rose and the head fell. But this was just the Black Shadow man's imagination. The truth was that the moment this knife approached Wang Ling, he didn't even move his head when he was in control. Firepower instantly gathered in his king's eye, and a laser shot out swiftly, instantly reducing the knife to dust. Unlike the villains who had been killed in a split second earlier, the Black Shadow leader reacted extremely quickly. The moment Wang Ling's defensive light beam shattered the blade, he immediately abandoned his sword and retreated. At the same time, a sense of danger crept into his heart. This person, what the hell is going on? The leader of the Black Shadows broke out in a cold sweat. He had no doubt that if he had hesitated just now, his entire body would have been crushed to ashes by Wang Ling's defensive light along with the disappearing blade. Retreat! The leader of the shadowy figures immediately gave the order. Their original plan was to wipe out all the researchers in the world. If the attack failed, they could choose to retreat and report the situation. After that, the organization would come up with a plan to deal with the researchers that they failed to kill. The 5 of them were originally full of confidence after breaking into the noodle house. Like Bai Yuquan, they relied on their new power to do whatever they wanted. They were also at the nascent soul stage, but their strength was several times stronger than that of a normal nascent soul cultivator. Because of this, the moment they broke into the noodle house, Guoping, who was also at the nascent soul stage, shuddered. They had already locked onto Guoping and Wang Ming's positions earlier on, but had overlooked the factor of Wang Ling. Wang Ling was too powerful. and the 5 Shadow Men's assassination plan couldn't proceed smoothly. Thus, they wanted to retreat. They activated the escape button on their black shadow suits. And in a split second, the 5 of them turned into shadows in the air as they turned into streams of black light that fled in one direction. But it was already too late. At that moment in control, Wang Ling's unfocused eyes finally focused. Wang Ling was back. He had already investigated what he wanted to investigate. Although he hadn't obtained any useful information, the moment his soul had returned, the memories from when he had been in control poured into Wang Ling's mind. Stay here. Wang Ling stared expressionlessly at the 5 shadow men. He knew that they were running away to report back, so all the more he couldn't let them escape. Thus, Wang Ling spread open his fingers and grabbed the 5 shadow men who had already escaped out of thin air. Ah! The 5 shadowy figures let out miserable screams one after another. Like strung cheese, they were pulled back from the void. Then the 5 of them fell to the ground, piled on top of each other. At the same time, Wang Ling finally realized that these 5 people weren't like the cultivators he usually dealt with. He had only used the strength of pinching an ant to cautiously pull them back, but he felt an unprecedented resistance. As Guoping had said, they weren't normal cultivators who use spirit energy to power spells, but an unknown energy that was denser than primordial qi was used to power the spells. This piqued Wang Ling's interest. Because the primordial qi was too powerful, Wang Ling had always been looking for a way to suppress it, and relying solely on the Dao Talisman seal wasn't going to work. Sooner or later he would think of a way to master this power himself. But now, an energy that was even denser than primordial qi had actually appeared. Then how had this group of shadow men been controlled? In an instant, Wang Ling pondered a lot of things. Several magic rings fell on the 5 people, and they were immediately imprisoned by Wang Ling's power of heavenly Dao. Because he wasn't sure how strong these people were, he deliberately used a little more strength this time. The 5 people were imprisoned on the spot. Wang Ling clapped his hands. For the first time, he felt that catching people was actually a strenuous task. It looked like he would have to eat a few more crispy noodle snacks today to replenish his SP. In that round of consumption just now, if a full bar of SP was 100, he had used up a whole 3 points. What a terrifying thing this was. After all, when he had dealt with Evil Sword God back then, he had only used up 1 SP. Just 5 nascent soul cultivators were already so difficult to deal with. Who knew what kind of enemies he would encounter in the future? At that moment, a figure covered in blood staggered into the noodle shop. Jiayin! Wang Ming cried out in alarm when he saw who it was. Chapter 985. Jiayin was badly injured and covered in blood. It seemed that she had used the last of her willpower to reach the noodle shop to look for Wang Ming. When she reached the noodle shop and saw that Wang Ming was still safe, it was as if the last of her burdens had been lifted, and she fainted with a bloodless face. Guoping hurried forward with an embarrassed expression. She's going to die, she's lost a lot of blood. At the same time, Guoping was deeply shocked by Jiayin's willpower. It could only be said that this was Jiayin. If it had been anyone else, they wouldn't have been able to hold on until now after losing so much blood. The situation was serious, and Wang Ling was just about to help her, when Dog 2 suddenly crawled out from under the table, and directly used the Toad Clan's swallowing spell on Jiayin. After swallowing Jiayin, Dog 2 burped. Little Master doesn't need to do anything, I can save her. You. Wang Ming was skeptical. When that black shadow man had broken in earlier, this green-furred dog had run faster than anyone else, and had instantly crawled under the table. You didn't come out earlier, why are you here now? Guoping laughed, thinking that Dog 2's cowardly appearance was a little funny. I don't know why I was so cowardly earlier. It's very likely that the author forgot about me when he wrote the last chapter. Dog 2 sighed. Can she really be cured? Asked Wang Ming. It's no problem. Our sky-swallowing Toad Clan's toad oil is a natural holy item for healing, and can heal internal and external injuries in an instant. After my body was transformed, I've been hoarding toad oil, and now I have enough for dozens of people, said Dog 2. A few minutes later, it opened its mouth and spat out a brand new Jiayin. Just as Dog 2 had said, Jia Yin's injuries were completely healed, and even her complexion had recovered a lot. In the demon world, the sky-swallowing toad clan's toad oil could be directly traded as a top-grade medicine, and part of the sky-swallowing toad clan's economy was supported by selling toad oil. Then, they would use the money earned from selling the toad oil to buy large quantities of flesh-eating flies to supplement their nutrition. The price of flesh-eating flies was hundreds of times cheaper than toad oil. After the flies were swallowed and digested, they would become brand new toad oil. The sky-swallowing toad clan's way of making money in the demon world was like a perpetual motion machine. Jia Yin was soaked in the toad oil, like a baby entering its mother's womb. Its internal and external injuries were instantly healed. After being spat out by Buttface, she quickly regained consciousness and slowly opened her eyes. He's awake. Wang Ming was excited. Even Wang Ling had a surprised expression on his face. The effect of the toad oil was even better than he had imagined. Captain Jai, what's going on? Guoping asked anxiously. He and Wang Ming had already made ample mental preparations. Jia Yin was already seriously injured, so the research institute was definitely in chaos. It was just that Wang Ming and Guoping couldn't have imagined that after Chengyu, the master of Immortal Mansion, was arrested, the #1 dark force had been dismantled, and that the dark network's organized criminal activities were under surveillance. They really couldn't think of any other organization that had the power to organize an armed force to launch a surprise attack on a research institute at a time like this. This was an important moment in establishing diplomatic relations with other planets, and the other party had chosen this time to launch a surprise attack on the research institute. This was simply the greatest provocation. Almost everyone in the research institute was killed, and old Qi is nowhere to be found. Jia Yin collected her thoughts and said, "They started a massacre as soon as they came in. If it wasn't for Wang Ming's long johns that helped me block a few fatal attacks, I'm afraid I would have already died in the first round." Saying this, Jia Yin took out the long johns from her storage space. Wang Ling had enchanted them to begin with, but this was the first time this godly weapon had been unable to withstand an attack. It was riddled with holes and was already in tatters. Even Wang Ling was a little astonished when he saw this. He never thought that this kind of power existed in the world. If he had known earlier, he would have upgraded the long johns. Who on earth launched the attack? Was it someone like this group of people in black shadow suits? Wang Ming asked as he pointed at the 5 people on the ground. That's right, they were all dressed in the same uniform. They snuck in without making a sound, which is why everyone in the research institute was so heavily injured. Jia Yin frowned. But it wasn't just our research institute that was attacked. All the research institutes around the world were also attacked. How could this be? Guoping turned pale with fright. It looks like the other party's target is already very clear. This is a plan to wipe out all the research institutes around the world, and I'm afraid all the researchers have been killed. Wang Ming frowned. If they hadn't been with Wang Ling this time, they would probably have already died by now. Who on earth are you? Dog 2 asked as it stepped on one of the black shadow men on the ground. Just kill us. We won't betray the organization. The 5 black shadow men turned their heads away. They were very stubborn and refused to confess. It was only because Wang Ling had acted so quickly that these 5 people might have already cut their own throats. Wang Ling could tell that this was a group of people who weren't afraid of death. If they could escape, they would, but if they couldn't, they had nothing to fear even if they died. It looks like there's no use asking them. Guoping slowly analyzed the situation. There are a few questions we need to face now. 1. How on earth did this group of black shadow men come here, and who instigated them? 2. What kind of power did they use? 3. What is their ulterior motive behind killing researchers all over the world? 4. If their goal is just to target researchers, then what is their purpose in capturing student Fang? Just as Guoping was talking about the 4th point, Wang Ming suddenly thought of something, and his eyes instantly lit up. I still don't know the first 3 points, but I have a very high probability of guessing the 4th point. Guoping. What is it? Wang Ming. Teacher Gua, have you forgotten Fang Xing's true identity and his background? Guoping's face turned a little unsightly. You mean? Wang Ming. Student Fang himself might not be of any value to them, but his father was the old devil's right-hand inventor back then. Perhaps they are holding Student Fang hostage because they want to resurrect immortal Shi Pai through his gene chain. Of course, all of this is just speculation for now. I still don't understand why they are massacring researchers so wantonly. The news has been suppressed for the time being, but in the end, the truth can't be contained. At that moment, Jiayin had already checked the news online. The murder of researchers all over the world was a major event, but if it was casually reported, it might become a fuse that would cause the entire cultivation world to panic. It was precisely because of this that this matter was still being suppressed for the time being. But Wang Ling, Wang Ming and the others were well aware. If they couldn't find a solution to this in a short period of time, it would still be difficult to solve the problem. Chapter 986. Guoping and Wang Ming had successfully escaped disaster, but Wang Ling knew that this group of shadow men wouldn't let them off so easily. If they continued to stay on Earth, they would be a threat to both of them. So after some discussion, Wang Ling directly brought Wang Ming, Guoping and the 5 captured shadow men to Divine Dao Star. For the second time, Star-Lord was so frightened that he fell off the bed. Now that his wound had split open for the second time, it might not be so easy for him to recover completely. Rest assured, Ling Jinren, I will do everything in my power to protect the two of you. Star-Lord made this promise, and his subordinates leaned against the door to listen. That evening, the interrogation of the 5 shadow men began on Divine Dao Star. The divine dragons roughly stripped them of their black shadow suits. Interrogation on Divine Dao Star wasn't that complicated. The divine dragons had their own plan, which was to use a 1,000-degree knife and a hydraulic press. The so-called 1,000-degree knife was a small knife that was supported by high-density divine power molecules. It cut open wounds on the skin one by one. The area of the wound was not large, but the pain caused by the wound was 1,000 times that of a normal knife. If one could find the right acupuncture point, even if it was just a small cut, it would be so painful that one would wish they were dead. Then there was the hydraulic press. The hydraulic press on Divine Dao Star was powered by divine power. When the interrogator was being tortured, the divine dragons would fix a certain part of the interrogator's body to the hydraulic press. Generally speaking, it was the arm that was being tortured. Then, when the hydraulic press was turned on, everything in its path would be crushed to dust. These people weren't afraid of death, but wanted to die. They wouldn't speak unless they were being tortured. Because of this, Star-Lord's first reaction was to double the pain on the other party. Since they were tight-lipped and weren't afraid of death, he could only use this method to make them speak. Although it was very painful, this method wouldn't cause extensive damage. Even if the divine power hydraulic press was used to press down on the arm, it wouldn't kill them. The moment the hydraulic press pressed down, the high density of divine power molecules would instantly coagulate and stop the bleeding, but the pain would be 1,000 times greater than that of an ordinary severed arm. Previously, in order to force various aliens to sign unequal treaties with Divine Dao Star, Star-Lord had often used this method to force alien leaders to submit, and it had worked time and time again. Wang Ling, Wang Ming, Guoping and the others had come to inspect the situation in Divine Dao Star's divine prison, while Star-Lord was personally in charge of the interrogation. These divine dragons had never seen such an ostentatious display before, but they still recognized Wang Ling's identity from his dead fish eyes. The group of divine dragons trembled in fear. There was no way they were mistaken. When Jinka and Bai Qiao had fused back then to make Jingbai come into the world, those dead fish eyes had left a deep impression on them. They knew that Jingbai's true identity was a sword spirit who had been summoned by a youngster. No one had seen Wang Ling's face, but they knew that Jingbai also had a pair of dead fish eyes. It was said that the spiritual sword was like its master. Now that Divine Dao Star's Star-Lord was behind Wang Ling to oversee the situation, he didn't even dare let out a fart. It wasn't hard for them to guess his true identity from this attitude. When Wang Ling arrived, Divine Dao Star's Star-Lord had already ordered people to strip off the clothes on these 5 shadow men. The 5 of them were to be interrogated separately, and collusion was forbidden. The interrogation room was made of a very special material, with strange divine patterns engraved on it, which at the same time eliminated the possibility of these people communicating telepathically. When the 5 of them were stripped of their clothes, Divine Tao Star's Star Lord directly waved his hand. "Get ready." However, just as the divine dragons were about to descend with the 1,000-degree blades in their hands, the torturers noticed something unusual. "Your Excellency, Star Lord, there seems to be a problem." "What problem?" "There's a mark on their buttocks that I've never seen before." "Mark?" Divine Tao Star frowned. He was about to step forward, but after thinking for a bit, he still retreated to the side and made way for Wang Ling and the others. "You're worth teaching." Wang Ming and Guoping patted Divine Tao Star's shoulder as they brushed past each other. Divine Tao Star's Star Lord felt a little aggrieved. After all, it was very humiliating to do this in front of so many subordinates. But in the end, his desire to live allowed him to complete this operation. "What kind of mark is this?" Wang Ming pondered as he stared at the mark. Although he didn't cultivate, he was well read. But in Wang Ming's memory, he had never seen such an engraving. He felt that there was something strange about it. "I've never seen this thing in all my years of research." Guoping then shook his head. Divine Tao Star's Star Lord frowned as he looked at it. He had wanted to step forward to show off, but realized that he didn't recognize this mark either. For a moment, the situation was a little awkward. But at that moment, a familiar voice rang out. "Maybe I recognize it." Wang Ling looked in the direction of the voice and realized that it was actually coming from the cast on Divine Tao Star's body. "Wang Ling." Divine Tao Star Lord was also startled. "Damn, you are. Don't remember my voice?" The cast laughed. Although Divine Tao Star's Star Lord hadn't reacted yet, Wang Ling recognized the voice. This was the divine chair that Jingbai had split in half. "You're that chair," Wang Ling said as he stared at the cast on Star Lord's leg. As expected of Ling Jinren, "It's me." "Everyone. How did you turn into a cast?" Guoping was curious. "After all, my materials were very expensive. Without me, it would have been very difficult to completely repair Star Lord's leg. Thus, God crushed me and ground me into a cast so that I could attach myself to Star Lord's thigh. On the other hand, this is also God's punishment for offending Ling Jinren. Star Lord's leg hair is a little too much, it's really prickly." After everyone calmed down, Wang Ling continued to ask, "Do you recognize the mark?" "I do," the divine chair that had turned into a cast said. "I was created by God and know everything in the universe, as well as all kinds of buttocks in the universe. I've lived for so long, what kind of buttocks haven't I seen?" "Everyone," the divine chair said. "This mark is called a life mark. The way to activate the seal of fate is very special. You also need to cultivate a special Tao called Fate Tao in order to carve the life mark and use the fate technique. Apart from heavenly Tao, outer Tao and divine Tao, are there really other powers in the universe?" "Of course," the divine chair replied. "But Fate Tao is very special and can't be cultivated by ordinary people. Because this Tao has the right to be designated, those who aren't designated won't be able to comprehend it in their entire lives." Chapter 987. Fate Tao. This was the first time Wang Ling had heard of it, but it was indeed the heavenly Tao related to fate, which Wang Ling had used a long time ago. In Chapter 23, he had used the Great Fate spell to predict Dopigua's future. In 600 years, Dopigua would open the largest seafood chain market in Huaxiao Nation since its founding. Heidaleo. But judging from the strength of the mastermind behind this group of shadow men, Fate Tao itself was different from the Great Fate spell. To put it bluntly, the Great Fate spell could only be considered a spell under Heavenly Tao, while Fate Tao was an independent Great Tao. That was the difference between the two. To be able to form an independent Tao was already proof that the profound meaning of Fate Tao and the Great Fate spell were fundamentally different. So, is it also because of Fate Tao that these people were able to come back to life? Wang Ming speculated on the side. He wasn't surprised by the existence of Fate Tao. As a special Tao, Fate Tao's ability to choose its master was what Wang Ming was truly curious about. From this point of view, it was likely that Wang Ling wasn't the only one chosen by heaven in this universe. But the question was, what was up with that teenager who looked exactly like Wang Ling in his dream? Wang Ming was a little bewildered. Could it be that the universe didn't choose the chosen ones at random? Could it be that only dead fish eyes could be chosen by heaven? Wang Ming was startled at this conclusion. He didn't have dead fish eyes, but a pair of very beautiful double eyelids, which were natural and gave off a kind of languid air. So was the real reason why he couldn't cultivate because the gods were jealous of his double eyelids? Wang Ming was a little absent-minded when he thought of this. Brother Wang Ming, have you thought of something? No. Wang Ming came back to his senses. In fact, he had just been wondering if he should wait until he returned to Earth before going to plastic surgery to see if he could change his double eyelids into dead fish eyes. Looking at the current fate Dao mark, that is indeed the case. There wasn't the slightest bit of hesitation in the Divine Throne's reply. A human face slowly appeared on Star-Lord's leg, which was covered in plaster. This face was the same as the one that had appeared on the Divine Throne. And when it appeared, there were golden petals of the kingdom of heaven falling around it. Even its appearance was incomparably sacred. However, the Divine Throne had been replaced with a leg. This appearance still gave off an indescribably strange feeling. The Divine Throne looked at the shadow leader in front of it. You can't fool me, let alone crispy noodles, Dao Monarch. Tell me about your origins. Since you already know everything, why are you still asking me? The leader sneered. He didn't fear death at all. He would not reveal any secrets. Most importantly, he had the life Dao mark on him. Once these people forcefully invaded and stole his memories, the life Dao mark would immediately activate and kill him. At that time, he would be the one freed. She would no longer have to feel the pain of torture. However, the Black Shadow seemed to have misunderstood something. Although he didn't say it, it didn't mean that he could use it to threaten him. When all was said and done, the Divine Throne was an emissary sent by the Divine Realm to assist in Divine Dao Star's development. It was originally Thousand-Winged God's exclusive chair to cross his legs. How honorable was its identity! When I crossed His Excellency God's legs, I listened to divine grace for thousands of years. Apart from Ling Zhenren and Lord Jingbai, I have never seen anyone who could be so arrogant and despotic in front of me. The Divine Throne said indifferently, and Wang Ling and the others were utterly shocked by these extremely bootlicking words. The truth was that being a bootlicking wasn't the crux of the matter, but that it could actually sound so righteous while doing so. Wang Ling had never seen anything like this in his life. Furthermore, he couldn't find anything wrong with the way the Divine Throne addressed him as this venerable one. It was essentially a throne. If it wasn't this venerable one, what should it be called? Don't even think about getting anything from me. The shadow leader gnashed his teeth. If this venerable one tells you the truth, I'm afraid you won't be able to remain at ease. The Divine Throne sneered. The reason why you can act so unbridled here is because you don't fear death. Judging from the mark on your buttocks, your master has probably created another world. And you are the souls of the dead who travel between the two worlds. And all of you are the departed souls that shuttled between the two realms. Am I right? The shadow leader's face instantly turned unsightly. What do you mean by souls of the dead who travel between the two worlds? Wang Ming asked. The reason is very simple. The Divine Throne replied. These people shouldn't have appeared in this world in the first place. They're already dead. Dead. That's right. The Divine Throne nodded. But because of the Fate Dao mark, they can be resurrected in another world. Based on my deduction, this other world should be the counterpart of the fish's real world. A place similar to the mirror world. All the people who die in the real world will be resurrected in that world through some kind of Fate Dao spell. How did you know? The shadow leader turned pale with fright. He had never expected the other party to actually hit the nail on the head on this matter. It seems that my guess is completely correct. The Divine Throne nodded again. Everyone. The shadow leader was unconvinced. You actually tricked me? My venerable self is a god's throne. Why can't I trick you? The Divine Throne laughed. Although I understand Fate Dao in the end, I only heard it from God's mouth. What I know is limited. But Fate Dao itself is a great Dao spell that distorts fate. My venerable self guesses that this Fate Dao spell has something to do with resurrection. This group of people actually aren't afraid of death. Presumably, they think that even if they die here, they can be resurrected in another world. That's a completely reasonable guess. Wang Ming and Guoping also nodded. At that moment, Jiayin thought of something. Then, does the killing of the scientists at the research institute also have something to do with Fate Dao? After they were killed, all their bodies were carried away. What's the purpose of these shadow men carrying the bodies away? It seems that this matter is already very clear. Wang Ming slowly closed his eyes as he thought of a guess. Scientific researchers all over the country were murdered. This was definitely part of their plan, and I'm afraid it was planned long ago. On the surface, it looks like they killed the researchers, but the truth is that they wanted to use the Fate Dao spell to bring this group of people to another world, and then use them for their own ends. As for why this group of people is so unscrupulous, Wang Ming paused, then said, I'm afraid it has a lot to do with their resurrection. Is there any way to break this? There is, the Divine Throne said. You just need to disrupt the order of their Fate Dao. How? Wang Ling asked telepathically. The Divine Throne gave an astonishing reply. Take off your butts and exchange them. Everyone. Sogu reading URL. Chapter 988. The Divine Throne had come up with a plan to replace the Fate Dao mark to break the order of fate. Since this group of people didn't need to worry about their own lives because of the Fate Dao mark, they would naturally confess as long as their confidence was broken. The leader of the Black Shadow Men was bewildered. He didn't doubt the Divine Throne's words at all. Based on the powerful divinity that the Divine Throne gave off, the leader of the Black Shadow Men was well aware that he wasn't its match. Although they had been strengthened by the Fate Dao mark and their strength had increased tremendously, allowing them to fight above their level. What kind of Divine Throne was this? We were all wronged and buried for hundreds of years back then. It wasn't easy for us to revive, and we just want to serve our master and live well. Please don't cut off our path to survival. The leader of the Black Shadow Men pleaded bitterly after struggling in his heart. Very well. The Divine Throne chuckled. Then let's talk about the mastermind behind this plan. Who is it? This person's surname is Bai, and his name is Bai Yuquan. He's our direct superior. We have no right to meet anyone of higher rank, the leader of the Black Shadow Men said. Bai Yuquan? Wang Ming thought the name was a little familiar. He frowned. I remember when Baizhi was arrested. Didn't he have a son called Bai Yuquan? This was his illegitimate child, but he died at a young age. According to Baizhi's own account, when he raised his son, he often used him as a dumbbell to train his muscles. One time, he accidentally broke his arm. Plus, his spirit qi is yin, and when it entered his body, it directly froze this child who was only a few months old to death. Everyone was astonished. No one had expected this kind of operation. As for why Bai Yuquan could be resurrected, after understanding the characteristics of Fate Dao, no one had any doubts. Someone who had been dead for hundreds of years could be resurrected, to say nothing of Baizhi's child. In addition, with Wang Ming's strange dream earlier, they could now confirm that the resurrection of President Baizhi and Devil Gut Fungus Lord was probably true. Then who was the mastermind behind the scenes? Was it that white-haired youngster who looked exactly like Wang Ling? Now that the matter of resurrection in the dream had been verified, Wang Ming's heart couldn't help trembling. Who on earth was imitating Wang Ling's face? He felt that he needed an answer. What's your name? Who were you before you were resurrected? What did you do? The Divine Throne continued to ask. I am Yu Zhong. I was a foreigner before I was resurrected. I later joined a foreign mercenary group. I died in a war between mercenaries. A mercenary war? Yes, in foreign countries, battles between cultivator mercenaries are common. These mercenaries were mainly rogue cultivators. Most of the rogue cultivators who joined the mercenary group did so voluntarily. Most of them were forced to join because they had no other choice but to do so. Many people were tricked into joining. They wanted to make a quick buck, but after joining, they realized that it was actually very difficult to get out. Although they made a lot of money, they didn't dare to spend it in many cases. The leader of the shadowy figures called Yu Zhong said honestly. Hearing this, Wang Ling and the others nodded. The history of cultivation mercenaries was more complicated, and Wang Ling still remembered Old Antique's explanation of foreign history in history class. In many cases, the so-called cultivation mercenary organizations were established in secret. They didn't work for any country, and only worked for their own organizations. Any country could secretly hire them, and entrust them with some confidential work. Mercenary organizations didn't have a position. If there was a conflict over a mission, they would only work for the side with the higher price. As for these rogue cultivators who didn't have a position, most of them were unregistered. Apart from themselves, there was no other information on their identities. So after this group of people died, there was no way to trace their identities. It seems that the situation is very clear, Guoping said. I'm afraid most of these shadowy figures were rogue cultivator mercenaries from 100 years ago. We can't trace their identities, even if our children know their names now. That's it. Wang Ming nodded and looked at the leader of the shadowy figures in front of him. He took out an electronic map and put it in front of the leader. Now I need you to point out the location of your base. The base is in the Palace of Mirrors. I can't point out the location on this map of yours, but I can point you to the entrance. After saying that, Yu Zhong pointed to a location on the map and then pleaded, but please don't exchange our butts. Don't worry, Wang Ming said. At this point, the interrogation was over. Star-Lord saw Wang Ling and the others off in front of Star-Lord Palace. Before leaving, Wang Ming asked the Divine Throne curiously, can swapping butts really break the Fate Dao mark? Of course not. I don't know how to break it, so I just casually said it to scare him, the Divine Throne replied. Everyone. Roughly 10 minutes later, they appeared at the entrance to a secret alley in the Palace of Brocade. Wang Ming had made ample preparations, and had brought Wang Ling 2 and Wang Ling 1 with him. He was wearing the newly developed number 2, while Guoping was wearing the number 1 metal suit. Both of them were now equipped with combat strength. There were guards at the mouth of the alley. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, Wang Ling used his king's eye to cover the scene again, so that all the guards here could see the scene from an hour ago. This move could be said to be stealthy, and it was much better than invisibility spells. The leader of the Black Shadow Men wasn't lying. As soon as Wang Ling and the others entered the alley, they noticed the mouth on the wall. How do we get in? Guoping asked. Wang Ming used the deduction spell to think of all kinds of possibilities, then said, you have to put your hand in the mouth and say the password. If it's wrong, your arm will be directly bitten off. But I haven't figured out what the password is for now. No need to go through so much trouble. At that moment, Wang Ling stepped forward. He reached out and touched the big mouth on the stone wall, then directly stabbed his hand in, and directly pulled out a long red tongue. The stone mouth was caught off guard by Wang Ling's stab. It was too deep. This was a deep throat. The stab made its throat feel red and swollen. Whoa! The stone mouth cried. It didn't have eyes, and tears flowed from its mouth. Wang Ling stared at the stone mouth, his expression as calm as an ancient well. Let us in. The stone mouth. Whoa, no. Wang Ling opened his dead fish eyes. No, I'll beat you. Stone mouth. I'll open. Chapter 989. After entering the Palace of Mirrors, Wang Ling and the others finally realized how strange this divine power was. They hadn't appeared at the mouth of an alley, but seemed to have been teleported to a random corner of the city. Furthermore, it wasn't just them. Different people turned into light particles and gathered here at every moment. Some of these people were old, some were young. After appearing in this world, it was as if they had been bestowed with a new realm, and they actually took the initiative to walk in one direction. Among this vast crowd of people, there were quite a few people in white coats. Isn't that old Chun? Guoping spotted an acquaintance, but felt that something wasn't right, so he didn't step forward to stop the other party. It looks like our guess is basically the same. These people might be people who died in the real world for various reasons, and sure enough they were resurrected here. Wang Ming adjusted his armor and entered camouflage mode. In this mode, Wang Ling 1 and Wang Ling 2 would turn into what looked like human skin masks that would attach themselves to Wang Ming and Guoping for camouflage. This was a function that Wang Ling had come up with based on his Great Transfiguration spell. And after many experiments, Wang Ming had realized it. Should we call him over and ask him about the situation? Guoping stared at the back of the researcher surnamed Chen for a moment. He wanted to go forward and ask him about the situation, but before he could do so, the researcher in the white coat was immediately grabbed by several black shadows who had descended from the sky. This group of black shadow men was exactly the same as the 5 people who had been caught previously. They were very skilled, and judging from their identities, they were probably the same untraceable cultivation mercenaries from 100 years ago. These people had also been resurrected after death, and then had sought refuge in this organization to become its most loyal subordinates. "What are you doing?" "I want to register." The researcher surnamed Chen struggled. "Behave." The leader of the Black Shadow Men hit the researcher in the stomach, and he immediately fainted. There were busybodies nearby who were watching. "What are you doing?" "These people are criminals, and need to be put under special control. Mind your own business. Line up and go to the dream house to register." The Black Shadow Man sneered. He then picked up the researcher, turned around, and disappeared into the air. The black shadows came and went as they pleased, leaving no trace behind. Clearly, they had received special orders to patrol the world and capture the researchers who had been resurrected and later arrived in the Palace of Mirrors. Admittedly, these researchers knew nothing about how they came to this world and how they died. Their memories had all been altered. This mode was a bit like a group of people entering a newbie village and being set to find a starting NPC to complete a specific quest. So what exactly was this dream house? Let's go take a look. Wang Ling and the others followed him. There were a lot of dream houses in this world for the purpose of registering people who had just returned to this world. Wang Ling followed the direction of the crowd and arrived at one of the houses. The nearby streets looked a little familiar. Dog 2 wagged its tail as it followed Wang Ling. Then, it broke out in a cold sweat at the sight of a statue in front of it. This was a statue of Dog 2 in its toad form. The location of the statue was exactly the same as the one near Central Street in Fangxing's family's noodle shop, but the content was different. The original statue was of Audiobook stabbing it with a sword. But in the Palace of Mirrors, the content of the statue was of Audiobook being swallowed into its mouth. Is everything the opposite of the Palace of Mirrors? Wang Ming and the others were also astonished by this scene. No wonder the streets here felt a little familiar, but also a little different. The overall layout of the streets was the same, but the direction had changed. Some of the historical stories of the original world had also been altered to give completely different endings. Fangxing's noodle shop had also changed its direction. The only difference was the dream house that the Black Shadows had mentioned just now. This was a place that the mastermind behind the scenes of this world had set up to register all newcomers. The layout of the dream house was very simple. A person dressed in the same Black Shadow suit was typing in front of a computer to register people. Next to him stood 2 Black Shadow thugs who were responsible for maintaining order. Everyone who came to the dream house would be asked some questions in turn, and the Black Shadow Man would then spin a roulette behind him. At first, Wang Ling and the others didn't understand what this roulette was for, but after seeing several people register, it suddenly dawned on them. Wang Ling and the others lined up at the back of the crowd, and a handsome boy stepped forward. "Name?" the Black Shadow Man in charge of registration asked. "Kai Yifan." The person in charge of registration entered the name into the computer for a query. Your name is Kai Yifan. You died because you loved playing basketball, but because you played too enchanting, people spurned you and turned you into a ghostly video. When you clicked on the ghostly video, your heart was affected by the frequency of the ghostly video, and your heartbeat inadvertently accelerated along with it until you finally died of excessive heartbeat. When the registrar said this, the young man seemed to remember something, and tears of grievance appeared in his eyes. "Yes, it's like this, I remember now. Now it's time to decide your fate." Then the registrar turned the roulette behind him, and the needle of the roulette finally stopped on a strange rune. Congratulations, it's the Tao of the human world. You can continue to live here as a human. The registrar smiled. Human? Don't worry, this is a beautiful world. Everyone here takes pride in playing basketball, and your enchanting dance will be appreciated here. I hope you can live a good life here. My name is Mingpa. I wouldn't lie to you. Thank you. The young man showed a look of gratitude, but also a look of doubt. Since I'm already dead, is this heaven? You can think of it that way. Transactions in this world don't require money, and all resources are shared. As long as you want, you can get whatever you want, and do whatever you want. The registrar smiled mysteriously. Congratulations again. The chances of you turning over a new leaf are very low on the roulette. Looks like the 6 paths are written on this roulette. In the queue, Dog 2 said, Hell Path, Hungry Ghost Path, Animal Path, Human Path, Azura Path, and Underworld Path. Ever since the Heavenly Path became an independent path, the original Heavenly Path has been replaced by the Underworld Path. As soon as it finished speaking, a bespectacled, slightly bald, and knowledgeable old man walked up to it. Name. The Black Shadow Man in charge of registration asked again. Chu Yixian, the old man said. I found it, you died of overwork. Mingpa looked at the screen and said. The old man recalled some of his experiences before he died, and immediately begged. I beg you, Mingpa, let me enter the Tao of the human world. I'm not talented, but I brought a gift for you. These are a few books that I personally wrote. Oh, looks like you're a talented man. The registrar with the code name Mingpa smiled, and took a look at the old man's books. These books were 3 years of college entrance examination, 5 years of simulation 1, 3 years of college entrance examination, 5 years of simulation 2, 3 years of college entrance examination, 5 years of simulation 3. Take him away. Mingpa's face was kind and benevolent. Not turning the roulette anymore? The black shadow on the side asked. No more, directly send him to the animal path. Chapter 990. Congratulations, you're a member of the human Tao. The dream room registrar smiled at Wang Ling, then took out a red stamp and tapped it on the back of Wang Ling's hand. This was the mark of the dream room. Everyone who entered this world and completed their registration would receive such a badge as proof of their identity. Of course, Wang Ling and the others had hacked in. So the truth was that there was no record of them on the registrar's computer. But now that the dream room registrar was under control, it was a piece of cake for Wang Ling to do this. They didn't know where Fangxing was now, so they could only infiltrate this organization to uncover the conspiracy behind it. Dog 2 also smoothly passed the verification, but Wang Ling didn't let the wheel stop on the human Tao. The dream room registrar gazed at Loopy Toad with a benevolent expression. Congratulations, Mr. Dog, you're still a beast in this life. Dog 2 didn't think there was anything wrong with what the registrar said, but it still sounded a little weird. Why was this guy scolding people? Wang Ling and the others' registration went smoothly, but just as they were about to leave, the 2 shadow thugs next to the registrar called out to them. You guys, wait up. The shadow thugs had a vigilant expression on their faces as they stared at Wang Ling and the others, feeling a little strange. How can dead people who come to this world form teams? How did you guys die? Wang Ming. We died in the Infinity War. Someone snapped their fingers and we died. The Shadow Man frowned. The Infinity War? He was a mercenary who had died hundreds of years ago. And when all was said and done, he was an ancient person, so he didn't understand what Wang Ming meant at all. He just felt that the name of this war sounded very awesome. Was it a battle that had taken place after his death? The Shadow Man didn't understand. At that moment, Guoping added something in the dumbfounded Shadow Man's ear. Guoping. Long live Hydra. The Shadow Man was stunned on the spot. He didn't know what this Hydra was, but for some reason, these words seemed to have a strange magical power that actually made him slightly dazed after he heard them. Wang Ling. Dog 2. Wang Ling and the others got into the spirit car. Just as the dream woman in the dream room had said, all forms of transportation and everything else in this world didn't require money. Just by relying on the engraving on their hands, they could pass through. Perhaps to these dead people, this was indeed a perfect world, but the most terrifying thing was that most of their memories had been tampered with. Although they knew the cause of their deaths, they didn't know how they died. After coming to this world, although they became residents, they lived more like puppets at the mercy of others. They might start over here, work again, marry again, have children again. But Wang Ling realized that the people in this world lived aimlessly. Sitting in the spirit car, Wang Ling looked around at everyone, but unexpectedly no one had a smile on their faces. Is this really okay? Buttface asked as he stared in the direction of the shadowy thug after they had left the dream room. Don't worry. Wang Ming replied telepathically. These people have limited knowledge, and as mere thugs, it's very easy for them to be intimidated. However, we will only encounter one, so we should be careful. Wait, you can transmit messages? Buttface was surprised. You underestimate my 2 sets of armor too much. Wang Ming smiled. At that moment, Wang Ling too had already activated the brainwave transmission function, and could rely on brainwaves to set up a local area network for sound transmission, which would allow them to communicate directly without being discovered. Where are we going now? This world is already under the control of the mysterious organization. Of course we have to figure out where their nest is. I've already marked the researcher who was captured just now. We should be able to find clues about the other researchers, Wang Ming said confidently. The place they were now going to was a munitions factory in the northern suburbs of Songhai City. It had originally been the headquarters of Weapon Saint Minister Ku, one of the 10 generals. Now that so many researchers had been killed in the real world and brought back to this world, it was likely that the other party was plotting some huge, unspeakable conspiracy. Is this the place? After the spirit car stopped closest to the northern suburbs, Wang Ling and the others decided to walk there to avoid alerting the enemy. That was because on their way here, they had noticed that apart from the Black Shadow Men, there was no one else flying on a sword in the sky. Everyone was using ground transportation, which was the complete opposite of the real world. After the era of national cultivation, it was common for people to cross the road on a sword. As long as they didn't drink and drive, they wouldn't be punished. Then Wang Ling opened his king's eye and used a pupil technique to cover the scene here. The scene was also fixed on an hour ago. The munitions factory was heavily guarded and desolate. One look was enough to tell that there was a huge secret inside. There were now many ways to detect invisibility, but fortunately with the power of the king's eye, it wouldn't be so easy for these people to discover them. As they approached the munitions factory, Wang Ling heard a conversation between several Black Shadow Men standing guard at the door. Bro, what on earth is being made inside? It looks like a magic staff, the insider replied. I escorted a man in a white coat inside just now to take a look. This magic staff looks a little strange. It's a pretty boy in suspenders holding a basketball, and the light from the magic staff shoots out directly from the basketball. It's pretty powerful. Pretty boy in basketball, could it be? You don't understand. This bro is now the symbol of peace in our palace of mirrors. Wang Ling and the others. This world was a little scary. Elsewhere in the real world, an emergency meeting was being held in the conference room of the 10 generals of Huaxiu Alliance. In the blink of an eye, an unknown Black Shadow organization had killed so many researchers, which shocked the top echelons of the world. The head of state appeared in a projection with an ugly expression on his face. Who can tell me what the hell is going on? This group of people is organized and planned, so they must have come prepared. Looking at the current situation, there is definitely a spy inside our research institute, President Qi said. Spy? I'm afraid so, Your Excellency, Head of State, President Qi said. President Qi said, the fortifications of each country's research institutes are top-notch. For the other party to be able to break through so easily, there must be a spy passing on secret information behind the scenes. I'm afraid that the start of all this has something to do with the breach of Mixiu's border defense base a few days ago. Chapter 991. You're talking about Mixiu Nation's border defense base, right? The face of the head of state's virtual projection was gloomy. Of course he knew that the border defense base had been breached by a mysterious force a few days ago, and Michio's head of state still hadn't figured out what was going on. All the other countries had initially treated it as a joke, but who would have thought that a worldwide operation would occur so soon after that? That's right, President Xi said. In this subordinate's opinion, it's not appropriate for the authorities to act on this matter for now. Continue, the head of state said as he looked at President Xi. As an official, Huaxiao Alliance might be able to help direct them, but if we directly take action, I'm afraid the other side will think that we're showing weakness. It's not just our Huaxiao Alliance. In this subordinate's opinion, Mixiao Alliance, Ingxiao Alliance, and the cultivator alliances of every country should be more conservative and calm, so that the other side can give themselves away. But judging from the current situation, I'm afraid the rest of the cultivation countries won't be able to react calmly. The chief nodded and asked, "What do you think, old Qi?" President Qi replied, "In this subordinate's opinion, we can directly get the Office of Strategic Deception to investigate. Huaxiao Alliance has invested a lot in the Office of Strategic Deception's construction. Now that it's time to use troops, I believe Director Grenade throwing won't have any problems. Let's do that for now." The head of state stood up. "Immediately issue the order for the Office of Strategic Deception to set up a special investigation team. We must solve this case as soon as possible." "Yes." President Qi and the 10 generals around him bowed. When the meeting ended, everyone left. General Yi leaned back in his chair, as if he had already fallen asleep. I don't know when old Yi got the bad habit of sleeping during meetings. Even the head of state doesn't do anything about it. Medical Saint Minister Luo smiled bitterly. Let him be. Although old Yi is retired on the surface, he has become accustomed to the 996 system over the years, and is still busy dealing with various things in private. I'm going to draft the documents, and I'll wake him up when we leave, President Qi replied. Thank you, old Qi. Minister Luo sighed helplessly, then summoned a big calabash shaped like a whale and left. This was the Void Koan gourd, Minister Luo's personal vehicle. At the same time, it was also a top-notch spatial sacred artifact. The space within it was so big that it could devour everything. After years of sacrificial refinement by Minister Luo, the interior of this magic treasure had been transformed from a small world to a large world. In the world inside the gourd, Minister Luo was like a god of creation. Have a safe trip, Sister Luo. President Qi saw her off at the door and watched her leave. Not long after Minister Luo left, General Yi, who had been pretending to sleep, suddenly opened his eyes. General Yi. Speak, old Qi. Why are you looking for me? Before the meeting was adjourned, President Qi used some tricks to keep General Yi alone. President Qi said bluntly, apart from the Office of Strategic Deception's investigation, we might also need your help, old Yi. What do you mean? General Yi narrowed his eyes. I need you, old Yi, to find out the spies hiding among us. And only you, old Yi, can do this. President Qi said. An enlightened sword heart can distinguish between evil and treacherous. You cultivate the boundless sword Tao, and your body has formed a massive righteous aura that no one else can match. You and I both know very well that our opponent this time isn't an ordinary person. Although I have an enlightened sword heart, it might not be of any use. General Yi got up, his face a little solemn. But now, it seems we can only give it a try. I've already found some clues. Old Yi, you can start investigating from there. After saying that, President Qi took out a jade tube and handed it to General Yi. This is the file on Immortal Shi Pai's case back then. It contains all the people involved in the case. After accepting the jade tube, General Yi's expression changed again, and he couldn't help thinking about something that had happened a long, long time ago. Those things played over and over in his mind like an old movie. The national terrorist incident this time was actually related to Immortal Shi Pai's case back then. Vaguely, General Yi suddenly felt a sense of fear. He felt like something big was about to happen. Not long after the Huaxiao Alliance meeting, a document bearing the direct seal of Huaxiao Alliance and the joint signatures of the 10 generals was directly sent to Audiobook, the leader of the Office of Strategic Deception's inspection team. The fact that the higher-ups had only set up a special investigation team immediately caused the entire Office of Strategic Deception to become highly focused. That very day, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal called for an emergency meeting, and the team leaders of each team arrived in the conference hall one after another. During the roll call, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal noticed that two people weren't present. One was Feng Xing, the leader of the Goon Squad, and the other was Wang Ling. This is a big deal. Why isn't Brother Ling responding? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't understand. Shifu and classmate Feng might be catching up on homework. Ajwa smiled. Everyone. This was a reasonable answer that no one could refute. In Ling Jinren's eyes, it was likely that making up homework was indeed more important than the current situation. But it was one thing for Wang Ling not to show up, but even Feng Xing wasn't here, which made Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal feel that something wasn't right. Classmate Feng Xing had always been a very polite person. Even if he wasn't present today, he should have sent a message in the group to let them know. But now, it was as if he had disappeared from the world, and there was no sign of him at all. Could something have happened? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that something wasn't right. But at that moment, a figure appeared at the entrance to the conference hall. It was a very beautiful girl with long hair, but her expression was very cold. Miss, we're about to start the meeting, and the scenic tour isn't here, Dharmaraja said as he raised his head. The girl glared at Dharmaraja, then straightaway sat down in a chair and crossed her beautiful legs on the table. I'm Feng Xing, Feng, classmate Feng? Everyone was shocked. It would have been fine if Feng Xing hadn't said anything, but now that she had suddenly mentioned her identity, everyone instantly felt that this girl's appearance was familiar. Classmate Feng Xing in her female form indeed looked like this. Because classmate Feng Xing was a man in his daily life, no one would have thought that the person who had come was actually Feng Xing. Is she an imposter? Ajwa also felt that it was a little strange. From her aura, it is indeed classmate Feng Xing. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was also astonished. But that wasn't all. Not long after Feng Xing sat down, another familiar youngster appeared at the entrance to the conference hall. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Ajwa rubbed their eyes in disbelief. Shifu? Ajwa called out tentatively. No need to greet me. I just saw the news and came especially for the meeting. Homework isn't more important than that. The youngster directly waved his hand at Ajwa, then directly walked up to Feng Xing and sat down next to her. Wait. Why did Ling Jinren speak? Everyone was shocked. Why are you looking at me so strangely? Grenade throwing? Why haven't we started yet? Hurry up and start the meeting. I can't wait any longer. Wang Ling's mouth was like a machine gun. Is someone pretending to be Ling Jinren? Lightning Dharmaraja was dumbfounded. No, judging from her aura, it is indeed Ling Jinren himself. Silian Jinren was also a little incredulous. But who could tell them why the taciturn Ling Jinren had suddenly become a chatterbox? Brother Zhua, what's going on? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was a little bewildered. I don't know either. Ajwa was also a little bewildered. Then he rubbed his eyes and stared hard at Shifu Wang Ling, whose style was completely different from usual. At that moment, Wang Ling's eyelids fluttered, and a pair of beautiful double eyelids appeared in front of everyone without the slightest bit of precaution. Ajwa. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Everyone. Chapter 992. There seemed to be nothing wrong with these two faces, but they gave off a very strange feeling. Wang Ling and Feng Xing's sudden appearance had turned from dead fish eyes into double eyelids, and even their personalities seemed to have changed drastically. How could the real Ling Jinren be a chatterbox? As Wang Ling's good friend of many years, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal almost immediately sensed the abnormality here. Could this double-eyelid chatterbox Ling Jinren be another clone like Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wondered, but when he turned to look at the Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch clone on the side, he saw Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's face full of hostility. Most clones could sense each other telepathically. It was very clear that the chatterbox Wang Ling's appearance wasn't within Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's range of senses. These two aren't in cahoots. They're enemies. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch immediately got up and released his aura to suppress them. But at that moment, Miss Bai Qiao suddenly got up and also released her aura. However, this pressure wasn't directed at Wang Ling and Fang Xing, but at Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's clone. High-level clones had their own will and thoughts. Even if the main body wasn't around, they would still act according to the main body's thinking pattern. But Bai Qiao was different. She was part of the spirit of the scabbard, and also part of the spirit of the sword. Thus, the moment Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch attacked, Bai Qiao's Save Master Spirit Blade mode was instantly activated. This wasn't Bai Qiao's conscious action, but a subconscious reaction. Even Bai Qiao herself didn't have time to react. "Stop! I can't control my body," Bai Qiao shouted at Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch. Her ahog was full of energy and glowed like a holy sword. "Damn it!" Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's eyes darkened, and in the end he decided to stop. He glared at the two imposters in front of him, his heart full of hostility. "Dao Monarch, what on earth is going on?" Dharmaraja was stunned, Fatty Lua was stunned, and everyone present was at a loss. Ever since Bai Qiao and Jinka had fused together to become Jingbai, Bai Qiao and Wang Ling's bond had deepened. The activation of Save Master Spirit Blade was undoubtedly the best proof of Wang Ling's identity. But on the other side, the real Wang Ling's clone was saying that the two people who had come for the meeting were imposters. What the hell was going on? Were they clones? There was indeed such technology in the cultivation world. For example, the humanoid magic treasure head of State 001 was the best example of the cultivation cloning technique. However, the clone was still fake, and there was still a difference between it and the original body. It was impossible for it to activate the series of magic treasures that had signed a contract with the original body. So what was going on now? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stood up and stared at Wang Ling and Fang Xing. "Brother Ling and Brother Fang Xing, are you real?" "Miss Bai Qiao, can't you explain yourself? Of course we're genuine goods." Fang Xing tugged at her long hair. In her female form, Fang Xing had her own flirtatious vibe, which was very rare to see. Seeing this, Fatty Luo and Dharmaraja couldn't help but exclaim in their hearts. They had never expected Fang Xing to be so sexy in her female form. Judging from Miss Bai Qiao's reaction, the two of you indeed don't seem to be imposters, and your auras are also familiar, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly said at that moment. Senior Immortal. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was extremely anxious. He was already convinced that these two people were imposters, but with Bai Qiao protecting her master, it was useless for him to make a move. "Don't worry, Dao Monarch, I'll handle it." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal waved his hand, and Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch could only step back. After all, he was here to assist the Office of Strategic Deception in its development, and couldn't act above his rank. "Count yourself lucky." Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch snorted. He forced himself to calm down as he stared at the two imposters in front of him with hostility. Thoughts flew through Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mind. His realm was currently the highest in this room, and he had to make some decisions like the head of a sect. His gaze swept over Wang Ling and Fang Xing, who he suspected were imposters, and he finally took a deep breath before saying, "Brother Ling, you and I are as close as brothers, and De Wang has seen how you usually are. Why have you become so lively today? It's like you've become a different person. People change. I know I usually don't talk much, but we're already at chapter 992. This author has been serializing for 2 years, but he's only reached chapter 992. Even at this tortoise pace, I don't have more than 20 lines in the book. My heart is also very tired." Chatterbox Ling sighed deeply in his heart, feeling very bitter. Everyone. Chatterbox Ling. "So, after reflecting on my painful experience last night, I decided that I must talk more in the future. As the protagonist of this book, how can I not talk? Change has to start little by little. I know this might be very difficult for me, but I hope everyone can still support me as always." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked at Fang Xing next to him. "Then, did classmate Fang Xing also change your mind after reflecting on your painful experience last night?" "That's right." Fang Xing nodded in her female form. "As for me, You all know that I've admired Wang Ling for a long time. I've decided to live with him as a woman from now on, and I'm going to get my marriage certificate tomorrow. Everyone. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. So soon? Female Feng Xing. Time waits for no man. Do you want me to wait until I'm old and yellow before I get my marriage certificate? Everyone was deeply shaken by Feng Xing's words, and couldn't pull themselves away for a long time. I understand. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed again as he looked at Wang Ling and Feng Xing. Since the two of you have decided to change your mind, we can only risk our lives to accompany you. We're about to start the meeting. Would you like to have some snacks? Let's talk while we eat. That's a good suggestion. Wang Ling nodded. Since Brother Ling has agreed, let's serve the snacks. Grenade-throwing senior immortal clapped his hands. Then, behind the screen in the conference room, several female disciples of the Office of Strategic Deception served the snacks that they had prepared. Wang Ling was startled. These are Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Crispy noodle snacks with different flavors. For Brother Ling's sake, I specially hired a chef from the North Sea to fry and mix different flavors of dipping sauces every day, so that Brother Ling can eat something different every time he comes. Brother Ling, don't you like it? No, I like it very much. Then have a try? All right. Wang Ling cut off a crispy noodle snack and put it in his mouth to chew. A few seconds later, there was the sound of retching in the conference room. Grenade-throwing senior immortal chuckled and immediately stood up. Everyone. This is an imposter. Let's beat him up together. The real Brother Ling would never throw up because of crispy noodle snacks. Chapter 993. I never thought I'd still be discovered. The talkative Wang Ling slowly got up, and an unprecedented aura burst forth from his eyes, which in the end turned into a dark shadow that enveloped everyone. What a heavy aura! Lightning Dharmaraja and the others were alarmed. Everyone knew that the real Ling Jinren was a very Buddhist person. He was a good young man who loved learning and world peace, and stood aloof from worldly affairs in his daily life. Politics, beautiful women, and money were far less important than a pack of crispy noodle snacks. And this was the main reason why everyone admired him. Who else could have the real Ling Jinren's unpretentious and unadorned air? They all looked at him enviously, but were too far behind to catch up. This was an expert realm that only experts who stood at the top of the world could achieve. If Feng Xing and I work together, you have no chance of winning. The talkative Wang Ling smiled gloomily. Ajwa trembled all over at these words. Senior immortal, even if it's a fake Sherfu, he seems very strong. Do we really have a chance of winning? Whether we do or not, we have to try. Grenade-throwing senior immortal's eyes were resolute. For him, Brother Ling had always been an insurmountable mountain. But that was the real Brother Ling. This was the one and only Brother Ling he acknowledged. That impeccable Brother Ling definitely wasn't this imposter in front of them. Since it was an imposter, they had a 100% chance of winning. At this thought, Grenade-throwing senior immortal couldn't help raising a finger at everyone. Even if their chance of winning was slim. But because this was an imposter, they still had a 1% chance of winning. Everyone's reaction to Grenade-throwing senior immortal's finger was different in that instant. Ajwa was shocked. As expected of senior immortal, he actually thought of this in such a short time. Does he mean for me to retreat up, and then activate the sex defense alarm system outside to lock down the scene? That should be it. After all, I'm the weakest here, and Sherfu isn't here, so I can only act as support. Otherwise, I'll immediately become cannon fodder once the battle starts. Senior Immortal is amazing, his battle plan is actually so clear. Lightning Dharmaraja was shocked. As expected of Senior Immortal, he actually thought of such a method in such a short period of time. Could it be that he wants me to use the holy relic's power of lightning to summon the ancient lightning to assist me in battle? That should be the case. After all, it seems that my only function here is to summon thunderbolts. Under the baptism of my ancient thunderbolt, this fake Ling Jinren might reveal a mysterious flaw. Perfected Immortal, you're really amazing. Your battle plan is actually so clear. Immortal Toya was astonished. As expected of Senior Immortal, he actually thought of such a method in such a short period of time. Could it be that he wants me to throw the gourd up and summon a small world to cover this place, so that the battle doesn't affect the sex conference room? At the same time, it can restrict the movements of the two imposters. Bai Qiao was shocked. As expected of true immortal, could it be that he wants me to summon Jinka as I fly up and have Jinka's power restrain me? As long as we become Jingbai again, this impostor's power won't work on me anymore. In a split second, the moment grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his finger, the team leaders of the Office of Strategic Deceptions teams almost immediately made up their minds. Thus, in the next moment, everyone in the conference hall released their auras and released powerful fluctuations of spirit chi. Everyone's movements were uniform, as if they had rehearsed this in advance. Everyone performed their duties and did what they could. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. He had raised his finger just now to boost morale. Who the hell knew what this group of people had understood? On the other side, even Wang Ling and Fang Xing were stunned by the scene in front of them. The top experts of the Office of Strategic Deception had acted together. This was a rare sight to see. As expected, this group of people isn't easy to deal with. Female Fang Xing sneered. With a wave of her hand, a scythe appeared in her hand, and she directly raised it to slash at Audiobook in the air. Audiobook was the weakest one in the room, so she had already come up with a strategy of taking them down one by one. The terrifying saber chi swept up an infinite amount of spiritual energy, turning into a crescent moon stained with the smell of blood and rushing into the sky. In the end, the crescent moon twisted in the air, like a blood snake twisting wildly in the air. Wherever it passed, the void would shatter, bringing with it a great power. Not good. Audiobook was on his way out when he sensed something was wrong. His real Shifu Wang Ling had personally set up the sect's defensive barrier back then. Once it was activated, these two imposters would have absolutely no chance of escaping. Brother Zhua, charge out with all your might. We'll take care of the rest. Lightning Dharmaraja shouted at the sky. He had already spat out the Thunder Clan's holy relic that had been passed down since ancient times, the Holy Thunder Pill. This pill had always been in Dharmaraja's throat, and now that he had taken it out, the sky above the Office of Strategic Deception was affected by the Holy Thunder Pill, and dark clouds suddenly covered it. The tens of thousands of dark clouds carried a terrifying weight as they pressed down very low, as if they could collapse and bury people at any time. Lightning flashed between the dark clouds and danced like a waterfall. Lightning Dharmaraja's realm might not be high, but the power of this holy thunder pill was enough to make his strength comparable to a true immortal's for a short time. But he couldn't maintain this state for too long, and there were very strong repercussions. Given Dharmaraja's current strength, he still couldn't completely withstand the formidable power of the Holy Thunder Pill's Ancient Thunderbolt. The Thunder Clan's Ancient Thunderbolt paid particular attention to the splitting technique of the Thunder Clan. Once it took form, even the alchemy master of the Holy Thunder Pill would be attacked by a waterfall. Thus, descendants of the Thunder Clan had to cultivate the unique lightning prevention spell from a young age. Unfortunately, Dharmaraja had only cultivated the lightning prevention spell to the 6th of the 12 layers. If the thunderbolt fell, it wouldn't kill him, but it would cause him to lose his memory for a short period of time, and he would become a fool without any fighting strength. He would need some time to recover before he could return to normal. Thus, summoning the Holy Thunder Pill was extremely risky for Dharmaraja, but there was no other way now. Fatty Luo assisted Dharmaraja from his side. He took out a stick from his large underpants and stuck it in the ground. This was the legendary weather stick, a magic artifact invented by Fatty Luo. When necessary, it could be adjusted to a lightning mode, thus increasing the power of the thunderbolt. It had to be said that Dharmaraja and Fatty Luo, these two heavyweights, cooperated extremely well in that moment. Boom! A thunderbolt as thick as a water bucket fell from the sky and smashed the dangerous saber strike of the female Fang Xing into smithereens. Audiobook gritted his teeth and seized the opportunity to escape. But he was well aware that this was just the beginning of the battle. Chapter 994. The power of the Holy Thunder Pills. Ancient lightning far exceeded Fangxing's expectations. But in terms of combat strength, the female Fangxing was just a true immortal, and wasn't really difficult to deal with. The most difficult person to deal with here was this fake Ling Jinren in front of them. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, I'll leave that fake brother Ling to you. I'll deal with this fake brother Fangxing. Seeing that the fake Fangxing's first attack had been blocked, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal immediately made up his mind. His strength was now above that of a true immortal. Even if he couldn't completely capture this fake Fangxing alive, at the very least, he wouldn't be any weaker in battle. As for Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch, this was an intelligent clone that his real brother Ling had split off to begin with. Regardless of the outcome of this round, it would naturally be best if they won, but if they lost, news of the intelligent clone's death would instantly reach the real brother Ling. Then let's do it. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch nodded. He was well aware that the Wang Ling in front of him was an imposter. As for the real Wang Ling, even his intelligent clone couldn't completely sense where he was. It was likely that he was in some kind of trouble. At that moment, everyone in the Office of Strategic Deception was of one mind, and the scene was very lively. All kinds of space arrays overlapped with each other, and with the power of Immortal Toya's small world covering them, Fatty Luo and Dharmaraja successfully activated the defense barrier to cover for Ajua. The space and the barrier twisted and intertwined like fried dough twists to form an impenetrable net that trapped the two imposters. The birdcage plan. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal never expected the blockade barrier that Wang Ling had set up in the Office of Strategic Deception to actually come in handy at this moment. You're really interesting. Since I'm here, of course I won't run away. Actually, there's no need to go through so much trouble to set up this barrier. The chatterbox Wang Ling looked left and right, seemingly satisfied with the situation in front of him. To be able to cause such a scene, it looks like Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal is really giving me face. But it's no use, you're all going to die today. You're too confident. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's expression was cold, in stark contrast to the grinning imposter on the other side. His hair was very long and hung down to his waist, and his facial features were a little similar to Wang Ling's. At the very beginning, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's facial features were exactly the same as Wang Ling's, but Wang Ling later gave him the authority to mold his face, and Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch could mold and adjust his facial features. However, there was one thing that couldn't be changed. He had to maintain his dead fish eyes. Everything could be lost, but the two most important things, dead fish eyes and crispy noodle snacks, couldn't be lost. Without either one of them, Ling Jinren wouldn't be perfect. In the next moment, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch directly attacked. Without any superfluous words, everyone saw a flash of green light as Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch suddenly moved forward and instantly appeared in front of the imposter. He raised his hand and swung it at the imposter's cheek with incomparable precision. Insignificant skill. The imposter's reaction was swift and fierce. He turned to the side and raised his arm to block the attack, and at the same time swung out a slap. Just like that, a scene that astonished everyone happened. No one would have thought that two experts with top combat strength would actually slap each other in public, as if they were waving tortoise fists at each other. And the most important thing was that this wasn't an ordinary tortoise fists. Each of their slaps carried the tremendous power to destroy mountains and rivers. As they fanned the air, Immortal Toya's small world was instantly smashed to pieces. Immortal Toya's heart ached. He had bought all the scenery in his gourd small world with his own money. What mountains? Little rivers. And that vast ocean. It was all real gold and silver. After a person's cultivation reached a certain realm, they often liked to cultivate their body and mind. Just like the manor system in some martial arts games, all the scenery and decorations in the small world could be bought with money. Immortal Toya had put in a lot of hard work to set up this small world. Because different spirit herbs grew in different environments, Immortal Toya could freely set up a nursery in the small world that was suitable for the growth of spirit herbs. But now everything in the small world was being destroyed bit by Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch and the imposter Ling Jinren. At the same time, because of the interference from the holy thunder pill in the sky, the weather in the small world was bad, and thunderbolts fell from the sky, creating a scene that looked like the end of the world. Brother, don't be too sad. The office will reimburse you for your losses later, Silyan Jinren comforted him. My losses are small. But where on earth is the real Ling Jinren? Immortal Toya was full of doubts, and at the same time, this was the question that everyone in the Office of Strategic Deception wanted to ask at that moment. We'll find out very soon, Silyan Jinren replied. Ajua's aura wasn't in the small world. Under Fatty Luo and Dharmaraja's cover, Ajua had charged out of the conference room and activated the defense barrier. Now his whereabouts were unknown. It was likely that he had gone to understand the situation. Elsewhere, the battle between grenade-throwing senior immortal and the imposter Fengxing was equally fierce. But compared with the noise caused by the two people slapping each other, it paled in comparison. In her female form, classmate Fengxing's attacks were even more ferocious than in her normal state, and each one was aimed at vital points. She wanted to kill grenade-throwing senior immortal. The fake classmate Feng is really vicious. As grenade-throwing senior immortal defended against her attacks, he couldn't help looking at classmate Fengxing's huge. This was a normal reaction for every man. Not long ago, there had been a popular online game in which some live streamers bought a visual focusing device that could accurately pinpoint where their gazes were focused. After the male live streamers turned on the device, they clicked on pictures of beautiful women. In the end, the first thing that most male live streamers focused on was the breasts of the beautiful women in the pictures. Grenade-throwing senior immortal didn't think he was such a perverted person. Staring at a girl's chest was very rude and not gentlemanly at all. But in the midst of the battle, his eyes would always involuntarily drift over. This was a huge distraction. What should he do? Was it because it was too big? No, grenade-throwing senior immortal took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Even if he was facing an imposter, the other party's figure and appearance were that of his good brother, classmate Fengxing. Grenade-throwing senior immortal had seen Fengxing's female form more than anyone else here. How could he have dirty thoughts about his own brother? So, the only explanation was that this imposter had definitely done something to her chest. Unfortunately, grenade-throwing senior immortal hadn't found any evidence of this obvious perverted behavior. Chapter 995. On the other side, after successfully activating the barrier, Ajua immediately rushed in the direction of the Wang family's small villa. Now everyone was in the dark and had no idea what was going on. The Office of Strategic Deception was in chaos, and Ajua had to figure out what on earth was going on. After activating the barrier, Ajua's train of thought was very clear. He wouldn't be able to help if he stayed to fight, and might instead distract everyone's attention to protect himself. So his first reaction was to go to the Wang family's small villa to look for Shifu. As Wang Ling's first disciple, Ajua had a special right. If necessary, he could seek help from the gremlins in the Wang family's small villa, who had been enlightened by Shifu. Thus, even if he didn't successfully find Shifu, he could still ask for help from the small villa. What happened this time was too sudden, and caught everyone off guard. Ajua flew to the entrance of the Wang family's small villa. When he saw that Dog 2 had also disappeared from the doorway, he cursed in his heart. Are Uncle and Auntie in? Ajua knocked on the door, but there was no response. Father Wang, Mother Wang and Grandfather Wang had all disappeared. Crap, I'm afraid something really has happened. Feeling that something was wrong, Ajua straightaway took out a pen from his chest pocket and pressed it hard with his finger. The pen instantly turned into a dazzling blue-gray spirit sword. Although he didn't know what on earth was going on inside the villa, he was already on guard. He knocked on the door and gave the password to enter. Crispy noodle snacks are #1 in the world. Click. The sound of the villa's door unlocking rang out, and then it slowly opened. Wang Ling had enlightened this door before, but that was a long time ago. It was a gremlin enlightened by version 1.0, and wasn't as powerful as the newly enlightened door in Wang Ling's bedroom. Now that the latest enchantment spell had reached version 3.0, Both Book of Sage Immortal and the bedroom door were beneficiaries of version 3.0. As for version 2.0, it was Lord Ma. However, Lord Ma's fighting strength was also very strong. As a version 2.0 gremlin that Wang Ling often doted on, Lord Ma's fighting strength was even comparable to that of version 3.0. The small villa was quiet, and there was a strange sense of stillness. Audiobook swallowed, moved slowly, and finally went up to the second floor with his sword in hand. There were no signs that the house had been invaded or that there had been a fight, but Audiobook found it extremely strange that Father Wang, Mother Wang and Grandfather Wang had all disappeared. What the hell happened? Let's take a look in Shifu's bedroom. Audiobook took a deep breath and went to Wang Ling's room. Then he saw the Book of Sage Immortal on the desk. The Book of Sage Immortal was omniscient, so it might know something. Holy book. What on earth happened? Audiobook asked. Master went to the Palace of Mirrors and lost contact with this world. Book of Sage Immortal answered. Since his soul was linked to Wang Ling's, he naturally knew what on earth had happened, so he told Wang Ling everything he knew in detail. How could this suddenly happen? Student Feng Xing was taken away because Shifu went to save him. But since you knew, why didn't you tell us? Audiobook rebuked him. Book of Sage Immortal said helplessly. As a gremlin enlightened by Master, I'm not allowed to leave the bedroom without the permission of Master or the person who authorized me. I'm also not allowed to use my power to change everything. All right. Audiobook sighed. Even so, where are Father Wang, Mother Wang and Grandfather Wang? They've taken Grandfather Wang back to his hometown. Why in such a hurry? Audiobook was blank for a moment before he exclaimed in shock. But their son suddenly disappeared, aren't they worried? Before Mr. Wang and Madam Wang left, I reminded them. But Mr. Wang didn't seem to mind. Audiobook covered his face and smiled bitterly. It seemed that this was indeed their son, which was why he had such a reaction. Then, Holy Book, you should know that the Office of Strategic Deception was attacked. The fake Shifu and student Feng Xing launched an attack, Audiobook said. Of course I know. Book of Sage Immortal replied. Without any reinforcements, your chances of winning are 1%. 1%, at that moment. Audiobook suddenly understood the meaning of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hand gesture earlier. It turned out that he was really talking about the chances of winning. What a wonderful misunderstanding. Then Holy Book. As the person who authorized you, I now order you to use everything you have to get rid of those two imposters. Then try to find out what their objective is. Audiobook said at that moment. He flashed his palm in which the character Ling shone brightly. Book of Sage Immortal finally understood after receiving the order. Understood. Now the first wave of reinforcements is already on their way to the front. The first wave of reinforcements? Aren't you going to make a move? Audiobook was curious. As gremlins enlightened by our Lord, we still have to keep a low profile. Unless we have no other choice, we can't leave the villa's perimeter. But I've already notified reinforcements, and our chances of winning the battle are now much higher. Book of Sage Immortal replied. In the end, imposters are imposters. There's no way they can compare to our real Lord. On the other side, not long after Book of Sage Immortal sent out the notification, a space tunnel opened up outside the Office of Strategic Deception's giant egg-shaped barrier. Looks like there's a lot going on right now. The newcomer was none other than Wang Zhen. Wang Zhen had previously been blacklisted by the Heavenly Tao for offending Wang Ling. As time passed, he had recovered some of his strength. He crossed his arms and floated in the sky. Lu Qingyi stood next to him, her willowy eyebrows furrowed. As expected, the smell on these two imposters is very strange. It's a power I've never seen before. If we want to help, we have to enter the barrier first. Wang Zhen looked down at the giant egg-shaped barrier. The scene looked very frightening, as if it were the end of the world. Outside the giant egg-shaped barrier, which was the size of a football field, dense dark clouds and surging thunder. The space around it cracked continuously, and even the ground caved in. Outside the barrier, the disciples of the Office of Strategic Deception were panic-stricken and didn't know what to do. This barrier was set up by Ling Junren to be airtight. There's no way to get in at all. Unless our bodies are naturally drawn into the space, and the energy outside the barrier flows in like a vortex, Lu Qingyi said. But if we do that, someone has to clear the way. Wang Zhen. Then you mean, Lu Qingyi. My strength isn't restricted. I'm the main fighting force, and I have to conserve my strength. So I'll leave it to you to clear the way. You've been beaten by your parents since you were a kid, so there's absolutely no problem with your physique. Wang Zhen. There's no time to think about it. It's up to you, Wang Zhen. As soon as she said that, Lu Qingyi kicked Wang Zhen down and followed behind him. Wang Zhen was drawn into the torrent of energy at the very front. And the pain was heart-wrenching. It hurt a lot more than his mother hitting him. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.